I am Maya, 35 years old, and I run one of the most successful crisis management firms in the country. But to my family, I am just the single mother who ruined her life. At my sister Emma's extravagant baby shower, her mother-in-law mocked me in front of everyone. Emma laughed and said at least her baby would actually have a father. My own mother chimed in to call me a complete failure. I stayed perfectly quiet. But my 12-year-old son Leo stood up, looked right at my brother-in-law, and asked Uncle Daniel, "Should I tell them about your other family in Seattle?" The entire room went dead silent. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to a toxic family member who underestimated your worth. Let me take you back 30 minutes before that explosive moment. The afternoon sun was pouring through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of Emma and Daniel's sprawling suburban mansion. The driveway was packed with luxury vehicles, a clear testament to the image my sister and her husband worked so hard to project. Emma had always been obsessed with appearances. Inside the house was a sea of pastel balloons, catered champagne, and towering floral arrangements. The catering staff circulated with silver trays of caviar and imported cheeses. A live string quartet played softly in the background. It was less of a baby shower and more of a networking event for Daniel's elite friends. I had spent the entire morning debating whether to even show up. My public relations firm handles scandals for politicians and billionaires, meaning I am used to navigating hostile territory. But family gatherings have always been my most difficult battlefield. I walked up the grand stone steps with my son Leo by my side. Leo wore a neat button-down shirt and held his head high. He has always been mature for his age, intelligent, calm, and incredibly protective of me. I wore a tailored emerald green suit, carrying a custom-wrapped gift box containing a vintage silver rattle. I had spent weeks tracking down that specific rattle. I wanted to show my sister that despite our differences, I still cared about her and her baby. I did not expect a warm welcome, but I thought we could at least maintain civility for one afternoon. Before I could even cross the threshold into the main living room, Patricia blocked my path. Patricia was Daniel's mother, a woman who wore her entitlement like a heavy perfume and wielded passive aggression like a scalpel. She looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on my tailored suit with a mix of surprise and immediate disdain. She could not comprehend how I could look so polished. Without even a basic greeting, she shoved a bulky plastic garbage bag into my free hand. The bag was heavy, smelling faintly of mothballs and damp basement air. I looked down at it, completely confused by the gesture. Patricia smiled, but it was a cold and practiced expression designed for an audience. She raised her voice, making sure the nearest group of guests stopped their conversations to listen. "I was just cleaning out my attic," she announced brightly. "And I thought of you right away, Maya. I know how difficult things must be for a single mother trying to make ends meet. I figured you could use some hand-me-downs." She paused, letting her eyes dart toward her wealthy friends before continuing with her performance. "Our family has always felt a deep Christian duty to help out underprivileged, single Black women. We know you girls often struggle to clothe your children without a man around. Please do not be embarrassed to accept our charity." Patricia did not just stop at handing me the bag. She reached out and patted my son's head as if he were a stray dog. "You know," she continued, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, "Daniel and Emma are setting up a college fund for their baby today. It is so important for children to have a solid financial foundation. I am sure you worry about Leo's future, constantly seeing as he does not have a father figure to provide for him. Perhaps if you ask nicely, Daniel might have some extra landscaping work for you at his office building. We believe in teaching the value of hard work." The blatant racism and classism hidden behind her sweet tone made the air in my lungs turn to ice. Several guests turned to stare, their faces a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. I felt Leo stiffen beside me, his small hands clenching into fists at his sides. I placed a calming hand on his shoulder, keeping my own voice perfectly steady. "Leo is 12 years old, Patricia," I reminded her, making sure my tone remained polite but firm. "He outgrew baby clothes a decade ago. I am afraid we have no use for this." Patricia just waved her manicured hand dismissively, an ugly smirk playing on her lips. "Oh, do not be so proud," she said loudly. "You can always take them down to a local flea market and sell them for extra grocery money. Every dollar counts when you are in your situation, right? Just consider it a blessing and take it." My fingers tightened around the handle of my custom gift box. The sheer audacity of this woman handing me a bag of trash at a formal event was staggering. I turned toward the large entryway trash can, fully intending to drop the insulting bag of mothball-scented rags right where it belonged. I was not going to cause a screaming match, but I was certainly not going to carry garbage around my sister's party. But before my fingers could let go of the plastic bag, a hand gripped my wrist with stinging force. It was my mother, Beatrice. She had materialized out of the crowd wearing a wide and frantic smile directed at Patricia while her fingernails dug painfully into my skin. She yanked my arm away from the trash can with surprising strength. "What do you think you are doing, Maya?" my mother hissed through clenched teeth. She kept her voice low, but every word was laced with pure venom. "Do not you dare come into your sister's beautiful home and start acting ungrateful." I stared at my own mother in absolute disbelief. "Mom," I whispered, trying to pull my arm free. "She just handed me a bag of literal garbage and insulted our entire community in front of a dozen people. Are you seriously going to stand there and defend her?" Beatrice did not care about the insult. She only cared about the optics. She snatched the beautifully wrapped silver rattle from my hands, glancing at it with total disgust, and tossed it onto a nearby side table like it was utterly worthless. Beatrice pulled me into a small alcove, shielding our argument from the main crowd, but making sure Patricia could still see my subjugated posture. "You have always been jealous of your sister," my mother spat her grip, bruising my forearm. "You could not stand that she got the fairy tale while you ended up a statistic. Do you think these people do not know what you are? You are a stain on this perfect day. Emma is carrying a child of privilege, a child who will inherit wealth and respect. Your presence here is a reminder of everything we have tried to overcome." She leaned in close, her breath warm and heavy with expensive champagne. "Since you got pregnant at 20 and dropped out of college, you have brought nothing but shame to this family. You ruined your life and you humiliated me. Now look at Emma. Look at what she has accomplished. She married Daniel. She has a real family, a real house, and real status in this world. She is a financial advisor's wife, a woman of substance. The absolute least you can do is shut your mouth, swallow your pride, and not embarrass us today." I looked across the room and saw Emma standing near a tower of cupcakes. Emma caught my eye, saw our mother scolding me, and simply lifted her glass with a mocking little smile. She reveled in my humiliation. She had always thrived on being the golden child, the one who did everything right, while I was paraded around as the cautionary tale. They truly believed I was still the broke, desperate girl from 12 years ago. They had no idea that the crisis management firm I built from the ground up now represented half the people in this very room. I stared into the eyes of the woman who gave birth to me, searching for any trace of maternal warmth. There was none. There was only a desperate, clawing need to be accepted by the very people who were openly mocking us. I thought about the multi-million-dollar contracts sitting on my desk at work. I thought about the trust fund I had already fully funded for Leo. I thought about the undeniable fact that I could buy and sell every person in this room 3 times over. But revealing my wealth right now would not be enough. They needed to fall from the pedestals they had built on my back. My mother gave my arm one final vicious shake. "I said thank her," Beatrice demanded, her voice cracking with hysteria. "Thank Patricia for the clothes, apologize for your attitude, and go sit quietly in the back until the gift opening is over. Do not speak to anyone. Do not touch the catered food. Just stay out of sight. You will show some respect to the family that elevated your sister, or I swear I will make you regret walking through those doors." The room seemed to hold its breath. Guests were openly watching us now, waiting to see if the supposed family failure would bow down to her wealthy white mother-in-law. I looked at the bag of trash in my hand. I looked at my mother's furious, desperate face. And then I looked down at my son. Leo did not look afraid. He looked perfectly composed, possessing a cold, calculating awareness that mirrored my own. He was watching Daniel schmooze with a group of investors across the room, and I knew exactly what my son was about to do. The camera slowly pans around the opulent living room, capturing the suffocating atmosphere of Emma and Daniel's baby shower. It moves in a deliberate arc, sliding smoothly over my shoulder to frame my sister Emma as she steps right into the center of the imported Persian rug. She taps a silver spoon against her crystal champagne flute. The sharp, demanding sound cuts immediately through the soft chatter of the affluent guests. The hired string quartet in the corner stops playing on command. Dozens of eyes shift toward her. Emma stands there glowing in a custom silk maternity gown. She rests one hand on her perfectly round belly and drapes her other arm through Daniel's. Daniel flashes his practiced, brilliant smile at the crowd. He looks exactly like what he is supposed to be, a wealthy, successful white financial advisor who has graciously elevated a black woman into his elite world. Thank you all for coming today. Emma begins, her voice projecting clearly across the expansive room. Looking around this space, seeing Daniel's wonderful family and all of our esteemed friends, my heart is just overflowing. Family is everything to us. It is the absolute foundation of a good, respectable life. The camera tracks sideways to capture my mother, Beatrice. She stands near the front of the crowd, gazing at Emma with an expression of pure, unadulterated worship. Beatrice nods emphatically at every word. She desperately seeks eye contact with Patricia, Daniel's mother, and the other affluent guests, making sure they notice her total agreement. Beatrice has spent her entire life chasing the validation of people who look down on her, and Emma is her ultimate trophy. Emma lets her eyes wander deliberately over the crowd before they lock squarely onto me. Her smile sharpens, transforming from a welcoming beam into a targeted weapon. We want to raise our child with the right values. Emma continues, her voice dripping with an artificial, sugary sweetness that makes my skin crawl. We want to give this baby a legacy of stability, wealth, and most importantly, respectability. That is why today is so incredibly special to me. I am so proud to bring a child into this world the right way. I am proud to give my baby a real family, with a father who is actually present and a last name that carries weight in this society. A murmur of polite, uncomfortable agreement ripples through the room. Patricia smiles approvingly, taking a slow sip of her red wine. But Emma is not finished. She takes a step forward. She ensures every guest follows her line of sight right to where I am standing quietly with my son. Because we all know what happens when you make reckless choices, Emma says. Her tone shifts into a theatrical whisper of false pity. We all know the heavy burden of carrying a child without a father to claim it. I look at my older sister, Maya, and I just feel so incredibly grateful that my baby will never have to know that kind of deep shame. My baby will never have to be a burden on the welfare system or a massive disappointment to our parents. At least my baby will actually have a father to raise it. The entire room suddenly feels extremely small. The air grows thick and heavy. Guests exchange wide-eyed, shocked glances. Some of the wealthy wives shift their designer handbags awkwardly, looking down at their shoes, avoiding eye contact with me. But they do not speak up. They do not intervene. They just stand there and watch the spectacle, silently judging the black single mother who has supposedly ruined her life. My mother Beatrice does not look away or try to protect me. Instead, she seizes this exact opportunity to completely distance herself from my existence and align herself with Patricia's elite circle. Beatrice steps right up beside Emma and claps her hands together, a loud and jarring sound in the quiet room. "Amen to that," Beatrice announces loudly. She turns to face the crowd, her voice trembling with manufactured righteousness. Raising Emma was a joy because she always knew her worth. She always knew how to build a respectable life. I pray every single day that her beautiful child never has to bear the indelible stain that her sister brought into our home. Beatrice points an accusing finger at me. Having a child out of wedlock at 20 years old, dropping out of college, ruining her future. It has been a nightmare for this family's reputation. Maya has been a dark cloud hanging over our heads for 12 long years. She is a complete failure. But Emma, oh my sweet Emma, you have washed that terrible stain away by marrying into such a prestigious, wonderful family. Beatrice beams at Patricia, practically begging for a crumb of validation from the wealthy white woman. Patricia simply gives a tight, condescending nod, clearly enjoying the display of a black mother tearing down her own daughter for the entertainment of the room. The camera tracks slowly across my face, pushing in steadily to capture my reaction. I do not flinch. I do not cry. I do not run out of the door like they desperately want me to. In my line of work navigating hostile corporate takeovers and massive political scandals, I have faced down ruthless billionaires, aggressive prosecutors, and relentless media mobs. A petty, insecure sister and a delusional validation-seeking mother do not even make my heart rate spike. They look at me and see a helpless college dropout. They have no idea that the crisis management firm I built from nothing now controls the public narratives of half the people in this very room. They do not know about the multi-million-dollar contracts sitting on my desk or the fully funded trust accounts holding Leo's inheritance. I simply reach for a crystal glass of sparkling water from a passing server's tray and take a slow, deliberate sip. I let the silence stretch out, allowing their toxic, hateful words to hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. I do not need to say a single word. Beside me, my 12-year-old son Leo adjusts his suit jacket. The camera pans down to his calm, steady hands, then tilts up to his face. Leo has spent his entire life watching me dismantle arrogant people with cold, hard facts. He has inherited my analytical mind and my absolute refusal to be intimidated by bullies. Leo steps forward. He does not hide behind me. He steps right into the center of the open floor, placing himself directly between me and the hostile crowd. He looks straight at Emma, his expression remarkably serene and mature for a child his age. Aunt Emma, Leo says, his voice clear and ringing perfectly through the dead silent room. Emma blinks momentarily, thrown off balance by a child interrupting her grand moment of triumph. "Yes, Leo," she asks, her tone patronizing and sharp. "Do you have something you want to apologize for on behalf of your mother?" Leo tilts his head slightly, his eyes slowly shifting away from Emma and locking onto Daniel, who is standing right beside her. "No, Aunt Emma. I just have a question about this perfect family you are talking about." Daniel's rigid, camera-ready smile falters for a fraction of a second. He shifts his weight from one foot to the other, suddenly looking incredibly uncomfortable under the piercing, unblinking gaze of a 12-year-old boy. "Should I tell everyone here about Uncle Daniel's other family?" Leo asks casually, as if he is inquiring about the catering menu. "Should I tell them about the wife named Sarah and the little boy named Toby living in Seattle?" The temperature in the massive living room drops below freezing. The silence that follows is absolute. It is the kind of heavy, ringing silence that physically presses against your eardrums. No one breathes. No one moves a single muscle. Emma's smug, triumphant smile literally melts off her face, replaced by total blank confusion. She looks at Leo, then turns her head slowly to look at her husband. "Daniel, what is he talking about?" she whispers, her voice trembling. Patricia, standing near the dessert table with a full glass of expensive red wine in her hand, turns deathly pale. The blood drains from her face so fast she looks like a ghost. Her fingers begin to tremble violently. The crystal wine glass slips from her suddenly weak grip. It plummets downward and hits the white marble floor with a resounding, violent crash. The dark red wine splatters everywhere, looking exactly like fresh blood spreading across the pristine, expensive stone. The sharp sound of the shattering glass breaks the spell. The room erupts into a chaotic chorus of loud gasps and frantic whispers. The wealthy guests who were just silently judging me are now staring at Daniel with wide, horrified eyes. "Uncle Daniel told you he goes on business trips to the West Coast every other week, right?" Leo continues smoothly, his voice slicing through the rising panic in the room. He completely ignores the shattered glass. "He does not go to business meetings. He goes to a house in Seattle. I saw the property records and the flight manifests on my mother's desk. Sarah and Toby think he is on business trips here in Atlanta. You think he is on business trips there? I guess building a legacy is really hard work when you have to do it twice." Daniel's face turns a violent, mottled shade of purple. The polished facade of the wealthy, respectable financial advisor completely disintegrates in real time. The veins in his neck bulge furiously against his expensive silk tie. He lets out a guttural sound of pure, unadulterated rage. He drops Emma's hand instantly. His hands curl into tight, white-knuckled fists. His eyes are wild and murderous as he charges directly across the marble floor, launching himself straight toward my son. He covers the distance between us in 3 massive strides. His heavy Italian leather shoes pound against the polished marble floor, shaking the ground beneath us. His massive hands reach out his fingers, curving into hooks, aiming directly for the collar of Leo's crisp white shirt. Leo does not flinch. My 12-year-old son stands his ground, staring the furious man down with absolute defiance. But a mother's protective instinct is faster than any man's blind rage. Adrenaline explodes through my veins, flooding my system with a primal, icy clarity. Time seems to slow down around me. I do not scream for help. I do not attempt to run away. Instead, my hand shoots out to the catered dessert table right beside me. My fingers wrap tightly around the edge of a delicate gold-rimmed porcelain plate. In one fluid, lightning-fast motion, I smash the plate violently against the sharp edge of the granite countertop. The sickening crack echoes through the vast room like a gunshot. Before Daniel's thick fingers can even graze the fabric of my son's shirt, I step directly into his path. I thrust my arm upward. I press the jagged razor-sharp edge of the broken porcelain firmly against the pulsing blue vein on the inside of Daniel's wrist. The sudden, violent shift in power freezes him instantly. He stops dead in his tracks, his massive frame hovering just inches from mine. He can feel the sharp ceramic biting into his skin. One sudden movement, one twitch of my wrist, and it will slice straight through. My voice drops an octave. It is low, utterly calm, and absolutely lethal. I look directly into his wild, panicked eyes. "If you breathe on my son," I whisper, making sure every single syllable is clear and distinct, "you will bleed out on this imported rug before an ambulance even reaches your security gate. Step back." Daniel swallows hard. His Adam's apple bobs nervously in his throat. The murderous rage in his eyes is instantly replaced by raw, trembling fear. He slowly lowers his hands, taking a clumsy, stumbling step backward. The entire room remains paralyzed. The wealthy guests are frozen like statues, their mouths hanging open, their champagne glasses suspended in midair. No one knows what to do. The elegant, sophisticated baby shower has devolved into a scene of chaotic violence in the blink of an eye. Then the silence is broken by a loud, theatrical wail. Emma sinks onto a plush velvet ottoman, clutching her maternity dress, sobbing hysterically. She plays the ultimate victim, crying out that her special day has been ruined. She demands someone do something to protect her and her husband from my supposed insanity. This is the exact moment any normal mother would turn to her son-in-law and demand the truth. A normal mother would ask Daniel who Sarah and Toby are. A normal mother would protect her grandson from a grown man's unprovoked physical assault. But Beatrice is not a normal mother. Beatrice is a woman whose entire existence is built on the validation of the wealthy people standing in this room. The threat of Daniel's secret family destroying her proximity to power is simply too much for her fragile ego to handle. So she chooses absolute denial. She chooses to sacrifice me to save her own grand illusion. Beatrice marches aggressively across the room. Her face is twisted with a frantic, desperate kind of fury. She stops right in front of me. She does not look at Daniel to demand an explanation. She does not check if Leo is unharmed. She raises her right hand and slaps me across the face with every ounce of strength she possesses. The sound of the slap is sharp and violent, bouncing off the high ceilings. My head snaps to the side. A hot, stinging pain radiates across my left cheek. I slowly turn my face back to look at her. I do not raise my hand to touch my cheek. I do not shed a single tear. I just stare at the woman who gave birth to me, watching her completely lose her mind to protect a pathological liar. "You bitter, jealous wretch," Beatrice screams at me. Saliva flies from her lips as she points an accusing finger directly in my face. "How dare you? How dare you bring your bastard child into this house and coach him to spread malicious, filthy lies about a good man? You are sick. You are a sick, twisted woman who cannot stand to see her own sister happy. The sheer absurdity of her words hangs heavily in the air. She is standing next to a man who just tried to attack a child, yet she is calling me the villain. Beatrice turns to the stunned guests, her hands raised in a desperate plea for their continued acceptance. Please, she begs them, her voice cracking with manufactured grief. Please do not listen to a single word this miserable failure says. She has been jealous of Emma since they were little girls. She ruined her own life by dropping out of college and getting pregnant. She has been trying to drag Emma down to her pathetic level ever since. She is just trying to destroy this marriage because no respectable man would ever want her. She turns back to me, her eyes filled with genuine burning hatred. I see exactly who she is in this moment. She is not a mother. She is a parasite clinging desperately to my sister's elevated status. You are a stain on this family, Beatrice hisses, stepping closer so only I can hear the full venom in her tone. You have been a dark cloud over my life for 12 years. I have tried to love you, but you are rotten to the core. I am done. Do you hear me? I am completely done. You are no longer my daughter. I disown you right here, right now. I never want to see your face again. You are dead to me. Now take your lying, disrespectful child and get out of my perfect daughter's home before I call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. She stands there, panting, her chest heaving with exertion, fully expecting me to break down. She wants me to fall to my knees. She wants me to beg for her forgiveness. She wants me to humiliate myself further to repair the severe damage to her precious social standing. Instead, I simply open my fingers. The jagged porcelain shard drops from my hand. It hits the marble floor and shatters into dozens of tiny glittering pieces. I turn my back on my mother, dismissing her completely. I look down at Leo. My brave, brilliant son is watching his grandmother with an expression of pure, unadulterated pity. He is not hurt. He is simply taking mental notes of exactly who these people are. I offer him my hand, and he takes it firmly. We turn to leave, walking with our heads held high, our dignity completely intact. We walk down the long, opulent hallway toward the massive mahogany front doors. As we reach the entryway, Patricia intercepts us. The matriarch of the family is shaking with a quiet, suppressed rage. The veins in her neck are prominent, and her perfectly styled hair seems to vibrate with her fury. She steps directly into our path, blocking the exit. She leans in close, invading my personal space. The sour stench of spilled red wine and stale mints rolls off her breath. She speaks in a low, venomous hiss, making sure none of her country club friends can hear the absolute malice in her voice. You think you can just walk in here and drop a bomb on my family? Patricia snarls, her eyes narrowed into dark slits. You think you can slander my son and walk away? You have no idea who you are dealing with. I have the best corporate lawyers in the state on retainer. I will unleash an army of attorneys on you by tomorrow morning. I am going to sue you for defamation, for slander, for emotional distress. I will bury you in endless litigation. I will drain whatever pathetic little savings account you have managed to scrape together. I will make sure you are bankrupt, homeless, and begging on the street. I will destroy your entire life for daring to speak against my blood. Patricia stands tall, her chest puffed out with arrogant certainty. She is so used to throwing her wealth and legal connections around to intimidate people. She fully expects me to cower in fear at the threat of a massive lawsuit. She expects me to apologize, to backtrack, to show absolute terror at the prospect of facing her high-priced lawyers. I stop walking. I stand perfectly still in the grand entryway of the mansion. I do not shrink back from her venomous gaze. I slowly turn my head and look Patricia directly in the eyes. I let the tense silence stretch for 5 long seconds. I look at her not as a threat, but as an impending casualty. And then I smile. It is not a polite smile. It is not a defensive smile. It is a slow, terrifying, deeply confident smile that reaches my eyes and shines with absolute authority. It is the smile of a predator looking at prey that has willingly walked right into a carefully laid trap. Patricia physically recoils. She takes a hesitant step backward, clearly rattled by my total lack of fear. She does not understand how a supposedly broke single mother can look at her with such predatory amusement. I do not say a single word in response to her threats. I do not need to. I just keep that chilling, knowing smile fixed on my face. I reach out, grasp the polished brass doorknob, and pull the heavy wooden door open. The bright, warm afternoon sunlight pours into the dark, toxic hallway. With my son's hand securely in mine, I step out of the mansion, leaving them all trapped inside the prison of their own impending destruction. The drive home from that suffocating mansion was entirely silent, but it was a comfortable, victorious kind of silence. Leo sat in the passenger seat, gazing out the window, completely unfazed by the chaos we had just left behind. He knew exactly what he was doing when he dropped that information, and he knew exactly who was standing beside him to handle the fallout. I slept incredibly well that night. The kind of deep, restorative sleep that only comes when you finally stop pretending to respect people who despise you. The next morning, the predictable machinery of their retaliation was already in motion. At exactly 8 o'clock, the sharp chime of my front doorbell echoed through my quiet, minimalist home. I set my coffee mug down on the pristine quartz kitchen island and walked to the entryway. Standing on my porch was a man in a cheap, poorly fitting gray suit, holding a thick manila envelope. He wore the smug, practiced expression of someone who delivers bad news for a living. He took one look at me in my simple morning robe, assumed I was exactly the struggling, desperate single mother his clients had described, and shoved the heavy envelope aggressively into my chest. "You have been served," he said with a harsh sneer, before turning on his heel and marching back to his battered sedan. I closed the door, walked back to the kitchen, and slid the stack of documents out of the envelope. It was a massive lawsuit filed by a mid-tier, notoriously aggressive law firm based in downtown Atlanta. The firm was known for utilizing shock and awe tactics, relying on sheer intimidation to bully middle-class individuals into submission. As I flipped through the crisp, heavy pages, I could not help but appreciate the sheer, unadulterated arrogance of my brother-in-law. Daniel was suing me for $2 million. The legal complaint was a masterpiece of fiction. It accused me of premeditated defamation, intentional infliction of severe emotional distress, and catastrophic interference with his professional business reputation. The document claimed that I was a deeply unstable, jealous relative who had maliciously coached a minor child to spout fabricated lies in a calculated attempt to ruin a joyous family occasion. The legal language was thick with outrage, painting Daniel as a pillar of the community and Emma as a fragile, innocent victim of my supposedly toxic vendetta. But the most revealing part of the lawsuit was the list of demands. Daniel did not just want $2 million that he knew a normal person could never pay. He wanted total public subjugation. Attached to the back of the lawsuit was a legally binding script. His attorneys demanded that I record a high-definition video of myself reading this exact script, post it across all of my social media platforms, and send it directly to every single guest who had attended the baby shower. I read the script out loud to the empty kitchen. It required me to state that I was a bitter, resentful woman who was entirely responsible for fabricating the story about a woman named Sarah in Seattle. It demanded I admit that I manipulated my own son out of pure spite because I could not handle the blinding success of my sister's perfect marriage. The final paragraph of the script literally required me to beg Daniel, Emma, and Patricia for their gracious forgiveness, stating that I was entirely unworthy of their continued association. They wanted me on my knees. They wanted to break my spirit, humiliate me publicly, and use the threat of complete financial ruin to force me into recording a confession that would clear Daniel's name. It was a classic amateur crisis management strategy. Intimidate the whistleblower so severely that they recant their statement, thereby making the actual truth look like the ravings of a lunatic. I took a slow sip of my coffee and let out a soft, genuine chuckle. If I really were a struggling waitress or an entry-level office worker, a $2 million lawsuit would have sent me into a full-blown panic attack. I would have been terrified of losing my modest home, terrified of bankruptcy, terrified of being crushed by Patricia's endless legal resources. But I am not a struggling office worker. I am the founder and chief executive officer of Apex Crisis Management. I eat aggressive litigation for breakfast. By filing this lawsuit, Daniel had made the most fatal miscalculation of his entire life. In a defamation lawsuit, truth is the absolute defense. By taking me to court, Daniel had just legally opened the door for my attorneys to subpoena every single one of his bank records, travel logs, and hidden assets to prove my son was telling the truth. He had just handed me the keys to his own destruction. Right on cue, my cell phone began to vibrate against the granite countertop. The caller ID flashed with my mother's name, Beatrice. I let it ring 3 times, enjoying the frantic buzzing rhythm, before I finally swiped the screen and lifted the phone to my ear. I did not even get the chance to say hello. "Did you get them?" Beatrice screamed into the receiver. Her voice was shrill, vibrating with a frantic, hysterical energy that forced me to hold the phone an inch away from my ear. "Did you get the papers, Maya?" "I did," I replied, my voice perfectly level. $2 million is a very specific number, Beatrice. I suppose Daniel needs a lot of cash to maintain 2 separate households. "Do not you dare play your little mind games with me!" my mother shrieked, completely ignoring my comment about his guilt. "You have crossed the line for the last time. You have brought a massive lawsuit down on your own head, and you are going to drag this entire family through the mud." Patricia called me at dawn. She is absolutely livid. She said her lawyers are going to take everything you own. They are going to leave you with nothing. Emma has been crying all night long. Her blood pressure is through the roof. You are putting her unborn baby at risk with your vicious, disgusting jealousy. She paused, gasping for breath before launching into the toxic tirade she had been waiting years to unleash. "I should have known you would end up trying to destroy us." Beatrice spat the pure venom dripping from every syllable. "I saw the rot inside of you 12 years ago. You have always been a stupid, ungrateful fool. When you came crying to my door 20 years old, knocked up and pathetic, expecting me to support your ruined life, I did exactly what I had to do. I did the right thing." The kitchen went perfectly still as I listened to her weaponize the darkest moment of my life. "I threw you out into the pouring rain where you belonged." Beatrice continued, her voice gaining a cruel, triumphant edge. "I handed you a crisp $200 bill and I told you to disappear. I told you that you were a heavy burden then and you are a massive, suffocating burden now. You thought you could come back into our lives and ruin Emma's fairy tale because your own life is a miserable failure. But you picked a fight with the wrong family, Maya. Patricia has more money and power than you could ever comprehend." I stood completely silent, absorbing the verbal blows. 12 years ago, those exact words had broken me. 12 years ago, standing on her porch in the freezing rain, pregnant and terrified, that $200 bill felt like a death sentence. I had sobbed. I had begged. I had wondered how a mother could look at her own child and feel nothing but cold disgust. But the scared, desperate girl who cried on that porch was long dead. The woman standing in this kitchen was forged in fire and absolute autonomy. Beatrice's words no longer had the power to cut me. They only served to validate every boundary I had ever drawn. "Are you listening to me?" "Maya," Beatrice barked, mistaking my silence for submission. "You are going to sign that apology today. You are going to set up your little phone record that video exactly how Daniel's lawyers wrote it, and you are going to beg them to drop this lawsuit. You are going to save your sister's marriage, and you are going to repair Daniel's reputation immediately. If you do not do exactly what I am telling you to do, Patricia and I will make sure you lose everything. We will call Child Protective Services. We will tell them you are an unfit, unstable mother. We will make sure you lose custody of that lying, disrespectful brat you call a son." The air in my lungs stopped moving. The faint, lingering amusement I felt about the lawsuit vanished instantly, replaced by a cold, absolute void. Beatrice had crossed the one line that could never be uncrossed. She had threatened my child. I did not raise my voice. I did not scream. I simply reached forward with one finger and pressed the red button on the screen, cutting my mother off right in the middle of her frantic, threatening breath. The silence of my home rushed back in thick and heavy. I set the phone down on the counter. I did not feel fear. I did not feel panic. I felt the singular, terrifying focus of a woman who was about to systematically dismantle an entire bloodline. I picked up the massive stack of legal documents, walked down the wide hallway, and entered my private home office. The room was a command center featuring 3 massive monitors, secure servers, and a wall of filing cabinets containing the darkest secrets of the corporate elite. I bypassed the standard phone and picked up the encrypted hardwired landline that connected directly to my firm's executive suite. I dialed a 4-digit extension. My private secretary answered on the first ring. "Good morning, Maya," she said, her voice crisp and professional. "Cancel all my non-essential meetings for the next 72 hours," I commanded, my voice sharp and precise. "Then activate Operation Spiderweb. It is time to move. Contact our legal department and have them file the countersuit against Daniel immediately. And get Seattle on the line. Tell his first wife to get ready to go live." The sharp, heavy click of the front door unlocking echoed through my quiet kitchen. I did not invite them in. I did not give them permission to enter my sanctuary. But the heavy wooden door swung open anyway, hitting the hallway wall with a loud, aggressive thud. My mother Beatrice stood in the entryway with her chin held high. She was clutching the spare brass key I had foolishly given her 5 years ago for emergencies. An emergency to Beatrice apparently meant an absolute entitlement to ambush her own daughter in her own home. Right behind her walked Emma, clutching a pristine cream-colored designer handbag to her chest, like a protective shield against the modesty of my neighborhood. And bringing up the rear was Daniel. His face was a mask of absolute, unearned arrogance. He wore a sharp, custom-tailored navy suit, looking every bit the wealthy, benevolent financial savior he desperately pretended to be. He surveyed my living room with a look of profound pity, the specific kind of pity that is entirely meant to degrade and diminish. They marched into my kitchen like an invading army. They moved with the aggressive, suffocating entitlement of people who truly believe the world owes them total submission. I remained standing perfectly still by the kitchen island, a fresh cup of dark black coffee in my right hand. I did not flinch. I did not raise my voice. I simply watched them walk blindly into the exact trap I had spent the entire night preparing. Daniel took the lead. He stepped right up to my kitchen island, invading my personal space, attempting to use his physical size to intimidate me. He reached into his sleek leather briefcase and pulled out a thick, heavy stack of crisp legal documents. He slammed the papers down onto the granite countertop. The sharp slap of the heavy paper broke the tense morning silence. "There it is, Maya," Daniel said, his voice dripping with unbearable condescension. "A formal apology and a complete retraction of every single malicious lie your son told yesterday. My corporate lawyers drafted it this morning. It is completely airtight and absolutely non-negotiable. All you have to do is sign on the dotted line, record the video apology exactly as we scripted it, and post it online. You do that and we will consider this unfortunate little tantrum over." I looked down at the papers. I did not reach for a pen. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee. Daniel leaned closer, resting his manicured hands on my counter. He flashed that practiced, brilliant smile. A slow push in on his face revealed the sheer intoxicating smugness radiating from his pores. He truly believed he held all the cards. He truly believed he had won. "Look, I am a very reasonable man." Daniel continued, his tone shifting into a sickening display of false generosity. "I know things are incredibly tight for you. I know raising a child alone on a receptionist's salary is a constant, terrifying struggle. Emma tells me you can barely afford the rent in this neighborhood, so I am willing to be gracious. If you sign this document right now, if you cooperate and repair the damage you caused to my impeccable reputation, I will write you a personal check for $5,000. He paused, letting the number hang in the air as if he had just offered to solve world hunger. $5,000, Maya. That is a lot of money for someone in your desperate position. You can use it to buy Leo some decent clothes. You can finally pay off whatever crushing credit card debt is keeping you awake at night. Think of it as a charitable donation from your sister's family. Just sign the paper, Maya. Take the handout and fade back into the background where you belong. Before I could even process the sheer audacity of his pathetic bribe, Emma stepped out from behind his shoulder. She looked around my kitchen, her upper lip curling in visible theatrical disgust. Her eyes darted from the modest stainless steel appliances to the simple subway tile backsplash. God, it is so incredibly depressing in here, Emma sighed, crossing her arms tightly over her silk maternity dress. It is so small, Maya. It is so cramped and cheap. I honestly do not know how you wake up every single morning in this tiny, pathetic little box and not feel like a complete and utter failure. Emma lifted her left hand deliberately, bringing it up to brush a stray lock of hair behind her ear. The movement was entirely calculated to catch the morning light pouring through the window. The massive 2-carat diamond engagement ring on her finger flashed brilliantly. She made sure I saw it. She made sure I saw the ultimate symbol of her supposed victory over my life. Look at my life, Maya, Emma sneered, her voice rising with a frantic manic energy. Look at what I have. I have a husband who absolutely adores me. I have a massive estate in the best zip code in the state. I have a closet full of clothes that cost more than your entire annual salary. I have the respect and admiration of the entire community. I am a wife. I am a mother. I am a woman of immense substance. And what do you have? You have a mouthy kid and a rented box. You could work 100 hours a week for the rest of your miserable life, and you will never, ever touch the kind of wealth and status I woke up to this morning. You are nothing. You have always been nothing. Beatrice stepped forward, nodding enthusiastically at Emma's cruel, relentless rant. She looked at me with cold, dead eyes. You are going to sign that paper right now, Maya, my mother demanded, pointing a rigid, shaking finger at the legal documents. You are going to sign it because I am telling you to. You have been a stubborn, foolish girl your entire life. You ruined your own future, but I will be damned if I let you ruin Emma's future. I kept this spare key because I knew deep down you would eventually need me to step in and manage your chaotic, pathetic life. Well, I am stepping in. Pick up the pen, sign the apology, take Daniel's generous money, and get down on your knees and thank God that this man is willing to show you such immense mercy. Beatrice leaned heavily over the counter, her face inches from mine. Sign it, she hissed. Sign it before I remind you exactly what happens when you cross me. I threw you out into the street once with nothing but $200 to your name. I will do it again. I will make sure you are utterly destroyed. The air in the room was electric. The tension vibrated against the walls. The invisible camera snapped away from their furious, desperate faces and focused squarely on my own. My face was a mask of absolute terrifying calm. I did not shout. I did not cry. I did not defend my home or my career. I simply set my coffee mug down on the granite counter. The sharp clink of the ceramic hitting the stone was the only sound in the room. I walked slowly around the kitchen island. Daniel puffed out his chest, expecting me to reach for the pen he had placed beside the papers. Emma folded her arms tighter, a triumphant smirk plastering her face. Beatrice let out a heavy sigh of relief, fully believing she had successfully bullied me into submission one more time. I walked right past them. I did not even look at them. I walked straight to the heavy wooden front door. I reached out and grabbed the brass handle of the deadbolt. With a loud, resounding crack, I twisted the heavy metal lock into place. The sound echoed through the small entryway. Then I reached for the spare key that Beatrice had left hanging in the keyhole. I pulled it out of the lock. I walked slowly back toward the kitchen, holding the key up between my thumb and forefinger. I held it right over the stainless steel trash can. I let go. The key hit the bottom of the empty metal bin with a loud final rattle. Daniel frowned, his smug expression faltering for the very first time. Emma uncrossed her arms, suddenly looking incredibly nervous. Beatrice took a hesitant step backward, sensing a massive shift in the atmosphere. "What are you doing, Maya?" Daniel asked, his voice dropping its confident edge. "Why did you lock the door?" I ignored his question. I walked over to the hidden compartment built seamlessly into the side of my kitchen cabinetry. I pressed my thumb against the biometric scanner. The panel slid open with a soft electronic hum. I reached inside and pulled out a thick, dark red folder. It was the exact shade of drying blood. I walked back to the kitchen island. I did not throw the folder. I placed it down deliberately, lining the edges up perfectly right next to Daniel's pathetic $2 million lawsuit. I looked at Daniel. The sheer, unadulterated terror was beginning to bloom in his eyes. He recognized the heavy embossed seal on the front of the red folder. It was the seal of a prestigious Seattle law firm, the firm representing Sarah. "Before I sign anything," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a freshly sharpened blade. "Before I sign a single page of your ridiculous amateur hour lawsuit, you might want to look at what is inside this red folder." I tapped my manicured fingernail twice against the heavy cardboard cover. "Before I sign," I repeated, ensuring every single word landed with maximum devastating impact. "You should really check to see if your wife's signature on this absolute power of attorney is actually real, Daniel." The camera immediately breaks loose from its smooth, stabilized track. It jerks into a frantic handheld style, the frame shaking violently to match the sudden explosion of chaos in the room. The polished elegance of the baby shower shatters in an instant. Daniel covers the distance between us in 3 massive, heavy strides. His expensive Italian leather shoes pound against the marble floor. His face is distorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He reaches out with his thick, manicured hands, his fingers curling into hooks as he aims directly for the collar of Leo's crisp white shirt. He intends to grab my 12-year-old son and physically drag him out of the room. Leo stands his ground. He does not flinch. But a mother's protective instinct is infinitely faster than any man's blind fury. Adrenaline floods my system, bringing with it a cold, hyper-focused clarity. Time seems to stretch and slow. I do not scream. I do not call for help. I move. My hand shoots out to the catered dessert table positioned right beside me. My fingers wrap tightly around the edge of a delicate gold-rimmed porcelain plate. In one fluid, lightning-fast motion, I smash the plate violently against the sharp, hard edge of the granite countertop. The sickening crack of the porcelain echoes through the vast room like a gunshot slicing through the collective gasps of the wealthy guests. Before Daniel's fingers can even graze the fabric of my son's shirt, I step directly into his path. I thrust my arm upward. I press the jagged razor-sharp edge of the broken porcelain firmly against the pulsing blue vein on the inside of Daniel's exposed wrist. I press harder. I press just hard enough for a single tiny bead of dark red blood to well up against the white ceramic. The sudden violent shift in power freezes him instantly. He stops dead in his tracks, his massive frame hovering just inches from mine. His chest heaves heavily. He can feel the sharp ceramic biting into his skin. One sudden movement, one twitch of my wrist, and it will slice straight through the delicate tissue and open a major artery. He knows this. He feels this. The absolute reality of his own mortality flashes across his eyes. The handheld camera pushes in tight on our faces, capturing the trembling tension in Daniel's jaw and the absolute lethal stillness in my eyes. My voice drops an octave. It is low, utterly calm, and completely devoid of fear. I look directly into his wild, panicked eyes. "If you breathe on my son," I whisper, making sure every single syllable is clear, distinct, and terrifyingly cold, "you will bleed out on this imported rug before an ambulance even reaches your security gate. Step back. Step back right now." Daniel swallows hard. His Adam's apple bobs nervously in his throat. The murderous rage in his eyes is instantly replaced by raw, trembling fear. He slowly lowers his hands, keeping his eyes locked on the jagged porcelain, and takes a clumsy, stumbling step backward. The entire room remains paralyzed. The wealthy guests are frozen like statues, their mouths hanging open, their champagne glasses suspended in midair. No one knows what to do. The elegant, sophisticated baby shower has devolved into a scene of chaotic violence in the blink of an eye. Then the silence is broken by a loud, theatrical wail. Emma sinks onto a plush velvet ottoman, clutching her maternity dress, sobbing hysterically. She plays the ultimate victim, crying out that her special day has been completely ruined. She demands someone do something to protect her and her husband from my supposed insanity. This is the exact moment any normal mother would turn to her son-in-law and demand the truth. A normal mother would ask Daniel who Sarah and Toby are. A normal mother would demand to see his flight records. A normal mother would protect her grandson from a grown man's unprovoked physical assault. But Beatrice is not a normal mother. Beatrice is a woman whose entire existence is built on the validation of the wealthy people standing in this room. The threat of Daniel's secret family destroying her proximity to power is simply too much for her fragile ego to handle. So she chooses absolute denial. She chooses to sacrifice me to save her own grand illusion. Beatrice marches aggressively across the room, pushing past the shocked guests. Her face is twisted with a frantic, desperate kind of fury. The handheld camera jolts as she steps right into the frame. She stops right in front of me. She does not look at Daniel to demand an explanation. She does not check if Leo is unharmed. She raises her right hand and slaps me across the face with every ounce of strength she possesses. The sound of the slap is sharp and violent. My head snaps to the side. A hot, stinging pain radiates across my left cheek. I slowly turn my face back to look at her. I do not raise my hand to touch my cheek. I do not shed a single tear. I just stare at the woman who gave birth to me, watching her completely lose her mind to protect a pathological liar. "You bitter, jealous wretch," Beatrice screams at me. Saliva flies from her lips as she points an accusing finger directly in my face. "How dare you? How dare you bring your bastard child into this house and coach him to spread malicious, filthy lies about a good man? You are sick. You are a sick, twisted woman. You are a sick, jealous failure. You cannot stand to see your own sister happy." The sheer absurdity of her words hangs heavily in the air. She is standing next to a man who just tried to physically attack a child, yet she is calling me the villain. Beatrice turns to the stunned guests, her hands raised in a desperate plea for their continued acceptance. "Please," she begs them, her voice cracking with manufactured grief. "Please do not listen to a single word this miserable failure says." She has been jealous of Emma since they were little girls. She ruined her own life by dropping out of college and getting pregnant. She has been trying to drag Emma down to her pathetic level ever since. She is a liar. She is a bitter liar. She is just trying to destroy this marriage because no respectable man would ever want her. She turns back to me, her eyes filled with genuine burning hatred. I see exactly who she is in this moment. She is not a mother. She is a parasite clinging desperately to my sister's elevated status. "You are a stain on this family," Beatrice hisses, stepping closer so only I can hear the full venom in her tone. "You have been a dark cloud over my life for 12 years. I have tried to love you, but you are rotten to the core. Do you remember when I threw you out? Do you remember when you were 20 years old, crying on my porch, pregnant and pathetic? I handed you a $200 bill and told you that you were a stupid, ungrateful fool who did not know how to build a respectable life. I told you that you were a fool then, and you are a fool now. You are nothing. You will always be nothing." Beatrice squares her shoulders, drawing herself up to deliver her final blow. "I am done. Do you hear me? I am completely done. You are no longer my daughter. I disown you right here, right now. I never want to see your face again. You are dead to me. Now take your lying, disrespectful child and get out of my perfect daughter's home before I call the police and have you arrested for trespassing." She stands there panting, her chest heaving with exertion, fully expecting me to break down. She wants me to fall to my knees. She wants me to beg for her forgiveness. She wants me to humiliate myself further to repair the severe damage to her precious social standing. Instead, I simply open my fingers. The jagged porcelain shard drops from my hand. It hits the marble floor and shatters into dozens of tiny glittering pieces. I turn my back on my mother, dismissing her completely. I look down at Leo. My brave, brilliant son is watching his grandmother with an expression of pure, unadulterated pity. He is not hurt, he is simply taking mental notes of exactly who these people are. I offer him my hand and he takes it firmly. We turn to leave, walking with our heads held high, our dignity completely intact. We walk down the long, opulent hallway toward the massive mahogany front doors. The camera shakes slightly, following close behind us, capturing the heavy, suffocating silence we leave in our wake. As we reach the grand entryway, Patricia intercepts us. The matriarch of the family is shaking with a quiet, suppressed rage. The veins in her neck are prominent, and her perfectly styled hair seems to vibrate with her fury. She steps directly into our path, blocking the heavy wooden exit doors. She leans in close, invading my personal space. The sour stench of spilled red wine and stale mints rolls off her breath. She speaks in a low, venomous hiss, making sure none of her country club friends can hear the absolute malice in her voice. "You think you can just walk in here and drop a bomb on my family?" Patricia snarls, her eyes narrowed into dark slits. "You think you can slander my son and walk away? You have no idea who you are dealing with. I have the best corporate lawyers in the state on retainer. I will unleash an army of attorneys on you by tomorrow morning. I am going to sue you for defamation, for slander, for emotional distress. I will bury you in endless litigation. I will drain whatever pathetic little savings account you have managed to scrape together. I will make sure you are bankrupt, homeless, and begging on the street. I will destroy your entire life for daring to speak against my blood." Patricia stands tall, her chest puffed out with arrogant certainty. She is so used to throwing her wealth and legal connections around to intimidate people. She fully expects me to cower in fear at the threat of a massive lawsuit. She expects me to apologize, to backtrack, to show absolute terror at the prospect of facing her high-priced lawyers. She expects the broke single mother to crumble under the weight of her elite power. I stop walking. I stand perfectly still in the grand entryway of the mansion. I do not shrink back from her venomous gaze. I slowly turn my head and look Patricia directly in the eyes. I let the tense silence stretch for 5 long seconds. I look at the pulsing vein in her neck. I look at the sheer desperation hiding just behind her threats. And then I smile. It is a bizarre, strange, and entirely unsettling smile. It is not defensive. It is not polite. It is a slow, terrifyingly confident smile that reaches my eyes and shines with absolute predatory amusement. Patricia physically recoils, her confident posture faltering as she tries to comprehend why her ultimate threat has only brought me joy. She takes a hesitant step backward, suddenly unsure of the ground beneath her feet. I do not say a single word to her. I do not need to explain myself to a woman who is about to lose everything. I reach out, turn the heavy brass handle, and push the door wide open. With my son by my side, I step out into the bright afternoon sun, leaving them to choke on the ashes of their own burning empire. The camera violently tilts into a sharp Dutch angle. The pristine, symmetrical lines of my kitchen are suddenly thrown completely off balance, visually mirroring the absolute psychological freefall happening inside the room. Daniel's cell phone vibrates against the granite countertop with the frantic mechanical urgency of a fire alarm. He stares at the glowing screen. The caller ID displays the name of his chief corporate accountant. His hands are trembling so severely that he fumbles twice before finally swiping the screen to accept the call. He lifts the phone to his ear. The color drains from his face in real time, leaving his skin the pale, sickly shade of wet ash. I do not need to hear the voice on the other end of the line to know exactly what is being said. I orchestrated it. I know the timeline perfectly. I watch Daniel's mouth fall open. He tries to speak, but only a dry, raspy wheeze escapes his throat. He stammers out a few fragmented words. He asks what the accountant means by frozen assets. He asks why federal investigators are currently standing in the lobby of his firm. He asks how Sarah could possibly initiate a complete unannounced asset lockdown. The phone slips from his loose grip. It hits the stone counter with a loud, sharp crack, the screen splintering into a spiderweb of shattered glass. Daniel's knees buckle entirely. The arrogant, towering patriarch who threatened to physically assault my son yesterday completely collapses. He falls heavily onto one of my modest wooden bar stools, his broad shoulders slouching forward, his head dropping into his shaking hands. He is ruined. He has absolutely nothing left. I do not give them a single second to breathe. I do not let the silence settle. I flip the heavy cover of the red folder open. I pull out the first stack of crisp, legally certified documents and toss them onto the counter right next to his shattered phone. I slide the first paper directly toward Emma. She stares at the document, her eyes wide and uncomprehending. That is a certified copy of Daniel's active marriage license to Sarah. I state my voice ringing with clinical, terrifying precision. There is no divorce decree, Emma. There was never a divorce filing in the state of Washington, nor in the state of Georgia. You are not a wife. You are a mistress. Your entire marriage is a complete legal fiction. You are an accessory to bigamy. Emma lets out a sharp, breathless gasp. She stumbles backward, her spine hitting the stainless steel refrigerator hard. She shakes her head wildly, refusing to process the words. She looks at Daniel, begging him to deny it, begging him to look up and tell her it is a vicious lie. Daniel does not look up. He keeps his face buried in his hands, letting out a low, guttural moan of pure, agonizing defeat. I slide the next stack of heavy printed papers across the granite. These are certified bank transfers. I continue tapping my manicured nail against the highlighted columns of numbers. Daniel did not build a successful financial advisory firm here in Atlanta. He built a hollow shell company. Every single dollar he has spent over the last 2 years was systematically embezzled from Sarah's generational family trust fund. He forged her signature on a sweeping power of attorney and drained her accounts to fund his double life. The massive estate you live in was bought with stolen money. The luxury cars in your driveway are leased with stolen money. I pause, letting my eyes drop deliberately to the massive diamond flashing on Emma's trembling left hand. I point directly at it. Even that spectacular 2-carat rock you were just waving in my face, Emma. He bought it using a platinum credit card registered to Sarah's maiden name. You do not own a single thing. You are wearing a stolen diamond, living in a stolen house, and playing house with a stolen husband. By tomorrow morning, the federal authorities will be seizing every last asset to pay back the millions he embezzled. You are going to be homeless. You have absolutely nothing. The temperature in the room drops to freezing. The sheer magnitude of the devastation paralyzes them. Daniel is rocking back and forth on the stool, hyperventilating. His chest heaves with rapid, shallow breaths as a full-blown panic attack takes hold. The credit cards are dead. The bank accounts are locked. The federal investigators are currently tearing his office apart, seizing his hard drives and freezing his client files. He is not just broke. He is facing decades in federal prison for wire fraud, extreme forgery, and grand larceny. The flawless, wealthy savior facade has been ripped away, revealing a desperate, pathetic con artist who has finally reached the end of his rope. I turn my attention to Beatrice. I expect her to scream. I expect her to faint. I expect her to rush to Emma's side and hold her favorite daughter as her perfect, carefully curated world disintegrates into ash. But Beatrice does not do any of those things. The camera pushes in on her face, capturing the horrifying realization that her proximity to wealth and power has just vanished into thin air. Beatrice does not care about Emma's broken heart. She does not care about the deception or the bigamy. She only cares about the impending public humiliation. She only cares about losing her elevated status at the country club. Beatrice turns slowly to face Emma. Her expression is twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated revulsion. She takes 2 quick, aggressive steps toward her youngest daughter. Without a single word of warning, Beatrice raises her right hand and delivers a vicious, resounding slap directly across Emma's cheek. The sharp sound echoes violently through the kitchen. Emma cries out, her hand flying to her bright red face. She looks at our mother in total shock, hot tears streaming down her cheeks. "You stupid, incompetent little girl!" Beatrice snarls, her voice dripping with absolute unfiltered disgust. You had one job. You had one job to secure a wealthy man and keep him satisfied. You let him keep a whole other family across the country. You let him steal from another woman right under your nose without noticing a single thing. You are a pathetic embarrassment. You have ruined everything I built for us. You have made us the laughingstock of this entire city. Emma sinks to the hardwood floor, sobbing uncontrollably. She curls into a ball, clutching her pregnant belly, as her mother towers over her with pure contempt. But Beatrice is not finished. She does not wallow in defeat. She is a survivalist, a ruthless narcissist who will latch onto any available lifeline to save her own skin. She turns away from her weeping favorite daughter and locks her desperate, calculating eyes onto me. She looks at the red folder on the counter. She processes the reality that the daughter she called a failure is actually the founder and chief executive officer of Apex Crisis Management. She realizes that I am the one pulling the strings, the one controlling the media narrative, the one holding the absolute power of life and death over their social standing. Beatrice drops heavily to her knees on my kitchen floor. The camera angle lowers, capturing her looking up at me from the ground. She crawls forward, completely ignoring her own dignity. She reaches out and grabs my hands with a desperate, clawing grip. Her nails dig painfully into my skin. She does not look up at me with remorse. There are no apologies for throwing me out into the freezing rain 12 years ago. There is no regret for calling me a bitter wretch just 10 minutes prior. There is only a ruthless, calculating demand shining brightly in her wide eyes. You are the CEO. Beatrice whispers, her voice breathless, frantic, and filled with wild expectation. You control the media. You bury massive scandals for politicians and billionaires every single day. You can fix this, Maya. You have to fix this right now. Activate your firm. Destroy Sarah's credibility. Bury this story before the press gets a hold of it. Save our reputation, Maya. Do your job and save this family. The camera angle tilts violently, shifting into a sharp, disorienting Dutch angle. The pristine, symmetrical lines of my kitchen are thrown completely off balance, visually mirroring the absolute psychological freefall happening inside the room. Daniel's cell phone vibrates against the granite countertop with the frantic mechanical urgency of a fire alarm. He stares at the glowing screen. The caller ID displays the name of his chief corporate accountant. His hands are trembling so severely that he fumbles twice before finally swiping the screen to accept the call. He lifts the phone to his ear. The color drains from his face in real time, leaving his skin the pale, sickly shade of wet ash. I do not need to hear the voice on the other end of the line to know exactly what is being said. I orchestrated it. I know the timeline perfectly. I watch Daniel's mouth fall open. He tries to speak, but only a dry, raspy wheeze escapes his throat. He stammers out a few fragmented words. He asks what the accountant means by frozen assets. He asks why federal investigators are currently standing in the lobby of his firm. He asks how Sarah could possibly initiate a complete unannounced asset lockdown. The phone slips from his loose grip. It hits the stone counter with a loud, sharp crack, the screen splintering into a spiderweb of shattered glass. Daniel's knees buckle entirely. The arrogant, towering patriarch who threatened to physically assault my son yesterday completely collapses. He falls heavily onto one of my modest wooden bar stools, his broad shoulders slouching forward, his head dropping into his shaking hands. He is ruined. He has absolutely nothing left. I do not give them a single second to breathe. I do not let the silence settle. I flip the heavy cover of the red folder open. I pull out the first stack of crisp, legally certified documents and toss them onto the counter right next to his shattered phone. I slide the first paper directly toward Emma. She stares at the document, her eyes wide and uncomprehending. That is a certified copy of Daniel's active marriage license to Sarah. I state, my voice ringing with clinical, terrifying precision. There is no divorce decree, Emma. There was never a divorce filing in the state of Washington, nor in the state of Georgia. You are not a wife. You are a mistress. Your entire marriage is a complete legal fiction. You are an accessory to bigamy. Emma lets out a sharp, breathless gasp. She stumbles backward, her spine hitting the stainless steel refrigerator hard. She shakes her head wildly, refusing to process the words. She looks at Daniel, begging him to deny it, begging him to look up and tell her it is a vicious lie. Daniel does not look up. He keeps his face buried in his hands, letting out a low, guttural moan of pure, agonizing defeat. I slide the next stack of heavy printed papers across the granite. These are certified bank transfers. I continue tapping my manicured nail against the highlighted columns of numbers. Daniel did not build a successful financial advisory firm here in Atlanta. He built a hollow shell company. Every single dollar he has spent over the last 2 years was systematically embezzled from Sarah's generational family trust fund. He forged her signature on a sweeping power of attorney and drained her accounts to fund his double life. The massive estate you live in was bought with stolen money. The luxury cars in your driveway are leased with stolen money. I pause, letting my eyes drop deliberately to the massive diamond flashing on Emma's trembling left hand. I point directly at it. Even that spectacular 2-carat rock you were just waving in my face, Emma. He bought it using a platinum credit card registered to Sarah's maiden name. You do not own a single thing. You are wearing a stolen diamond, living in a stolen house, and playing house with a stolen husband. By tomorrow morning, the federal authorities will be seizing every last asset to pay back the millions he embezzled. You are going to be homeless. You have absolutely nothing. The temperature in the room drops to freezing. The sheer magnitude of the devastation paralyzes them. Daniel is rocking back and forth on the stool, hyperventilating. His chest heaves with rapid, shallow breaths as a full-blown panic attack takes hold. The credit cards are dead. The bank accounts are locked. The federal investigators are currently tearing his office apart, seizing his hard drives and freezing his client files. He is not just broke. He is facing decades in federal prison for wire fraud, extreme forgery, and grand larceny. The flawless, wealthy savior facade has been ripped away, revealing a desperate, pathetic con artist who has finally reached the end of his rope. I turn my attention to Beatrice. I expect her to scream. I expect her to faint. I expect her to rush to Emma's side and hold her favorite daughter as her perfect, carefully curated world disintegrates into ash. But Beatrice does not do any of those things. The camera pushes in on her face, capturing the horrifying realization that her proximity to wealth and power has just vanished into thin air. Beatrice does not care about Emma's broken heart. She does not care about the deception or the bigamy. She only cares about the impending public humiliation. She only cares about losing her elevated status at the country club. Beatrice turns slowly to face Emma. Her expression is twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated revulsion. She takes 2 quick, aggressive steps toward her youngest daughter. Without a single word of warning, Beatrice raises her right hand and delivers a vicious, resounding slap directly across Emma's cheek. The sharp sound echoes violently through the kitchen. Emma cries out, her hand flying to her bright red face. She looks at our mother in total shock, hot tears streaming down her cheeks. "You stupid, incompetent little girl!" Beatrice snarls, her voice dripping with absolute, unfiltered disgust. "You had one job. You had one job to secure a wealthy man and keep him satisfied. You let him keep a whole other family across the country. You let him steal from another woman right under your nose without noticing a single thing. You are a pathetic embarrassment. You have ruined everything I built for us. You have made us the laughingstock of this entire city." Emma sinks to the hardwood floor, sobbing uncontrollably. She curls into a ball, clutching her pregnant belly, as her mother towers over her with pure contempt. But Beatrice is not finished. She does not wallow in defeat. She is a survivalist, a ruthless narcissist who will latch onto any available lifeline to save her own skin. She turns away from her weeping favorite daughter and locks her desperate, calculating eyes onto me. She looks at the red folder on the counter. She processes the reality that the daughter she called a failure is actually the founder and chief executive officer of Apex Crisis Management. She realizes that I am the one pulling the strings, the one controlling the media narrative, the one holding the absolute power of life and death over their social standing. Beatrice drops heavily to her knees on my kitchen floor. The camera angle lowers, capturing her looking up at me from the ground. The camera pushes in tight, zooming past the terrified faces of Daniel and Emma until the frame is entirely filled by my mother's trembling manicured hands. Her perfectly painted acrylic nails dig fiercely into the fabric of my trousers, her knuckles turning bone white with the sheer force of her desperate clawing grip. She is kneeling on the cold hardwood floor of the very house she just called a cheap, pathetic box. She is anchoring her entire weight onto me, a parasitic attachment trying to siphon away my power to save her own collapsing illusion. Look at me, Maya. Beatrice pleads, her voice a frantic, breathless whisper that borders on hysteria. You have to fix this. You are a professional. This is what you do for a living. You handle messes. You make scandals disappear for people who pay you millions. We are your family. You owe us your protection. I stare down at the woman who gave birth to me. There is no warmth in her eyes. There is no maternal regret for the horrible things she said just 10 minutes ago. There is only a rabid, self-serving terror. She does not care that Daniel is a monster. She does not care that my sister is a mistress. She only cares that her country club friends might read about this in the morning paper. Do your job, Beatrice demands, shaking my legs as if trying to physically jolt me into obedience. You call Sarah right now. You tell her you made a mistake. You destroy whatever evidence you have in that red folder. You have the connections to hack into the news outlets and kill the story before it breaches the local networks. You have to save Emma. She is pregnant. Beatrice tilts her head up, her eyes wide and wild, delivering the most astonishing, unapologetically cruel justification I have ever heard in my entire life. Emma cannot be a single mother. Beatrice insists, her voice vibrating with absolute conviction. She is not like you, Maya. She is fragile. She is delicate. She was born to be a society wife, to host charity galas and raise her children in a gated community. She cannot endure the deep, indelible shame of raising a bastard child alone. She cannot be a humiliating, tragic charity case. You know how to survive in the mud. You are used to suffering. You are tough. You practically thrive on being a pariah. But Emma would break. A scandal like this would literally destroy her. The sheer breathtaking audacity of her logic hangs heavily in the quiet kitchen. I look over at Emma. My sister is still curled up on the floor by the refrigerator, her face streaked with black mascara, clutching her designer handbag as if it might somehow shield her from the federal authorities. She looks up at me, her eyes echoing our mother's pathetic plea. You can handle the disgrace, Beatrice continues, her fingernails biting deeper into my skin. You have been dealing with the stigma of being an unwed mother since you were 20. It is already your brand. So you take the fall for this. You make the evidence vanish. You cover for Daniel so he can quietly negotiate a private settlement with Sarah. He needs to divide those assets properly so he can walk away with enough capital to maintain Emma's lifestyle. Then he can quietly finalize a legal divorce, and they can get married legally. You have to do this for your sister. The air in my lungs feels suddenly very cold, very clean. The last lingering invisible string that tied me to this toxic family completely snaps. I look down at my mother's hands still gripping my clothes like a drowning woman clinging to a life raft. I do not shout. I do not show an ounce of the blistering rage boiling beneath the surface. I simply reach down, grasp my mother's wrists with an iron grip, and forcefully yank her hands off my body. Beatrice gasps, stumbling backward on her knees, her eyes wide with shock at my physical rejection. I step back, creating a definitive physical boundary between us. My voice is sharp, precise, and entirely devoid of any familial warmth. You are asking me to commit a federal crime to subsidize a con artist, I state, letting the absolute reality of her demand echo off the walls. You are asking me to destroy evidence in an active federal investigation so that a pathological liar can steal more money from the woman he has been emotionally and financially abusing for years. And you are demanding I do this because you believe my sister is too delicate to face the consequences of her own extraordinary arrogance. Beatrice scrambles to her feet, her face flushing a deep, violent shade of crimson. You are her sister, she shrieks, her desperation turning back into venom. It is your duty to protect her. I step forward, my eyes locking onto hers with a predator's focus. My tone drops into a deadly, unyielding register. Duty. I repeat, tasting the bitter irony of the word. Let us talk about duty, Beatrice. Let us talk about what a mother owes her child. 12 years ago, I stood on your immaculate front porch. I was terrified. I was pregnant. I was begging for my mother to help me figure out how to survive. Do you remember exactly what you said to me? Beatrice's mouth opens and closes, but no sound comes out. The sudden shift in the conversation catches her completely off guard. Because I remember every single syllable, I continue stepping even closer, forcing her to look directly into my eyes. You told me that I was a humiliating, tragic charity case. You told me that I had made my bed and now I had to lie in the dirt. You looked at my swelling stomach and told me that my child was a permanent stain on your respectable life. You said I was a foolish, ungrateful wretch who deserved every ounce of suffering coming my way. And then you handed me $200 and told me to get off your property before the neighbors saw me. I paused, letting the heavy, suffocating silence amplify the weight of those memories. Emma whimpers quietly from her spot on the floor, shrinking away from the sheer intensity radiating from me. Daniel remains paralyzed on the bar stool, his face still buried in his hands, completely broken. You told me I was born for the mud. I say, my voice steady, cold, and razor sharp. You were right. I learned how to survive in the mud. I learned how to fight. I built an empire from absolutely nothing while you spent a decade curating a pathetic, hollow illusion of wealth. I became a kingmaker. I control the narratives of the most powerful people on the continent. I built a fortress of absolute security for my son. And I did it all without a single drop of your conditional, toxic love. Beatrice shakes her head, tears of pure panic finally spilling down her cheeks. Maya, please, she begs, her voice cracking. You cannot do this. You cannot just stand there and let your sister lose everything. I can and I will, I reply effortlessly. You came into my home. You insulted my life. You tried to bribe me with $5,000 of stolen money. You threatened to call Child Protective Services on my son. You crossed the absolute point of no return. I am not your savior, Beatrice. I am your reckoning. I turn my back on her entirely. The dismissal is absolute. I walk over to the sleek modern console table positioned beneath the large flat-screen television mounted on my living room wall. I pick up the black television remote. You think you can bully me into silence, I say, my back still turned to them. You think you can sweep Daniel's decades of fraud under the rug to protect your precious country club memberships, but you fail to understand the fundamental rule of crisis management. I turn around holding the remote in my right hand. You never ever antagonize the person who holds the detonator, I state coldly. I raise my arm and point the remote directly at the large screen. I press the power button. The screen flashes to life in brilliant high-definition color. The volume is set perfectly, filling the room with the crisp, urgent voice of the local news anchor. Daniel flinches violently at the sudden noise. Emma covers her mouth, her eyes fixed on the screen in absolute horror. Beatrice stumbles backward, bumping into the kitchen island as the broadcast begins to play. The camera pushes in over my shoulder, framing the television screen perfectly. A blazing, bright red breaking news banner scrolls rapidly across the bottom of the broadcast. The anchor looks directly into the camera, his expression gravely serious. Breaking news this hour out of downtown Atlanta, the anchor announces, his voice echoing off my modest walls. Federal authorities have just raided the executive offices of prominent wealth management firm Vanguard Financial. FBI agents were seen carrying dozens of boxes of seized documents and hard drives from the building just moments ago. The screen cuts to live aerial helicopter footage. Dozens of heavily armed federal agents in tactical gear are swarming the glass-fronted high-rise building where Daniel's office is located. Police cruisers with flashing blue and red lights barricade the street, blocking any chance of escape. We are receiving unconfirmed reports that the firm's chief executive officer, Daniel Sterling, is currently facing a massive multi-agency investigation regarding severe allegations of wire fraud, grand larceny, and corporate embezzlement. The anchor continues, the red banner flashing urgently below his face. Sources inside the Justice Department indicate an emergency arrest warrant has been issued, and authorities are currently moving to secure his private residence. I lower the remote. The flashing lights from the television screen reflect in my eyes as I look back at the three people standing in my kitchen. The illusion is completely dead. The perfect facade has been burned to the ground. The reality of their absolute destruction has finally arrived. Checkmate, I whisper. The camera executes a violent, dizzying whip pan. It slashes rapidly back and forth between the glaring high-definition television screen where aerial footage shows federal agents swarming the Vanguard Financial Building and the absolute paralyzing terror painted across the faces of the three intruders in my kitchen. The frame tilts abruptly into a severe Dutch angle, throwing the pristine, symmetrical lines of the room completely off balance. The visual distortion perfectly captures the sickening vertigo of their collapsing reality. The news anchor's voice continues to rattle off devastating charges of wire fraud, extreme forgery, and grand larceny, but the broadcast is nearly drowned out by the heavy, erratic breathing echoing through the space. Daniel snaps. The sheer, undeniable reality of his complete destruction finally breaks through his catatonic shock. The pristine savior facade shatters into a million jagged pieces. He lets out a sound that is half terrified sob and half animalistic whine. He shoves himself off the bar stool with such violent, frantic force that the heavy wooden chair crashes backward onto the marble tiles. He does not look at Emma. He does not spare a single glance for the woman carrying his unborn child. He does not even acknowledge his mother-in-law kneeling on the floor. He moves with the blind, pathetic desperation of a cornered rat. He scrambles past the kitchen island, his expensive Italian leather shoes slipping frantically on the polished floor. He runs. He abandons his pregnant mistress and his entire fabricated life in a fraction of a second. The heavy oak front door bangs open, hitting the entryway wall with a resounding crack. He sprints down the driveway toward his leased luxury car driven entirely by pure cowardice. We listen to the sharp, frantic screech of tires tearing against the asphalt as he flees the scene, leaving the two women he deceived behind to face the catastrophic wreckage of his lies. Emma watches the open doorway, her mouth hanging completely open. The reality of his cowardly abandonment strikes her with full force, and she collapses. She sinks until she is a crumpled heap on the hardwood floor, weeping with loud, ugly, theatrical sobs that bounce off the high ceilings of my house. Before Beatrice can even attempt to process Daniel's sudden flight, a sharp, piercing ringtone cuts through the sound of Emma's hysterical crying. Beatrice flinches violently. Her hands are shaking so severely that she struggles with the gold clasp of her designer purse. She pulls out her phone. The caller ID flashes brightly in the tense kitchen. It is Patricia. Beatrice's eyes widen with a sudden desperate spark of hope. She truly believes Patricia is calling to execute the vicious threat she made earlier. Beatrice blindly hopes the wealthy matriarch is calling to announce that her army of elite corporate lawyers has arrived to save the day, to silence me, and to crush this impending scandal into dust. Beatrice frantically swipes the screen to answer, pressing the phone tightly against her ear as if it is a lifeline. "Patricia, thank God," Beatrice gasps, her voice trembling with frantic relief. "You have to do something right now. You have to send your attorneys immediately. Maya is completely out of control. The news is broadcasting lies, and Daniel just ran out the front door in a panic. You have to fix this before the press completely ruins our reputation." But there is no arrogant, aristocratic reassurance on the other end of the line. Instead, a shrill, hysterical scream erupts from the phone speaker. The volume is so loud and the tone so frantic that I can hear every single word echoing clearly in my quiet kitchen. Patricia is not calling with an army of lawyers. Patricia is calling in absolute, unadulterated terror. "Are you watching the news?" Patricia shrieks, her voice completely devoid of its usual country club superiority. "They are here, Beatrice. The federal agents are inside my house right now. They kicked down my front door. They are tearing apart my home office. They are seizing my computers and packing my personal banking records into boxes. They are freezing every single account I have ever opened." Beatrice goes perfectly still. The blood completely drains from her face, leaving her looking hollow and aged. "What are you talking about?" Beatrice whispers, the phone shaking visibly against her cheek. "You have absolutely nothing to do with Daniel's business operations. You told me you were shielded from his corporate dealings." "I am not shielded," Patricia wails, the sound of heavy boots and shouting federal agents clearly audible in the background of the call. Daniel routed the stolen money through my offshore accounts to hide it from Sarah. He used my personal signature to set up the dummy corporations. The FBI is holding a federal warrant for my arrest right in front of my face. They are charging me with complicity, Beatrice. They are charging me with international money laundering and federal conspiracy. They are seizing my estate. They are taking my cars. They are taking everything I own. I am ruined. We are completely, entirely ruined. The line goes dead with a sharp, heavy click. Beatrice stands entirely paralyzed. The phone slips from her limp fingers and clatters onto the granite countertop. The realization hits her with the devastating force of a freight train. There are no lawyers coming to save them. There is no wealthy matriarch waiting to sweep this under the rug. The money is gone. The elite status is gone. The entire glamorous empire was a flimsy house of cards built entirely on stolen funds, and the federal government has just blown it all to pieces. But the true horrifying depth of their toxicity is revealed in the very next moment. Emma suddenly stops crying. The theatrical sobs cease entirely. She wipes the smeared black mascara from her cheeks with the back of her hand and slowly pushes herself up from the floor. She does not look toward the open front door where the father of her child just fled a federal indictment. She does not express a single ounce of concern for Daniel facing decades in a maximum security prison. She does not ask if the man she claims to love is safe. Emma looks directly at me. Her eyes are completely dry now, replaced by a cold, deeply disturbing sense of entitlement. The golden child syndrome runs so incredibly deep in her veins that she cannot even begin to comprehend a reality where she is not catered to and financially supported. "So you are actually a multimillionaire?" Emma says, her voice eerily calm as she brushes the invisible dust off her silk maternity dress. "You are the chief executive officer of a massive firm. You have all this money hiding in the bank while I am standing here about to lose my entire life." She walks toward me, her chin lifting with that familiar, sickening arrogance. She adjusts the strap of her pristine, cream-colored Hermes handbag on her shoulder, clinging desperately to the physical symbol of wealth, as if it constitutes her actual identity. "You heard what Mom said," Emma demands, stepping right up to the kitchen island, completely unfazed by the criminal catastrophe unfolding around her. "You heard what is happening downtown. Daniel's accounts are entirely frozen. The feds are taking everything he has. That means I have absolutely no way to pay the massive mortgage on the estate. I have no way to pay the household staff or the exorbitant country club fees. I am not going to be humiliated in front of my wealthy friends. I am not going to be kicked out of the absolute best neighborhood in the state just because my husband made a stupid financial mistake." She crosses her arms, glaring at me as if I am a disobedient employee who has simply failed to meet a basic deadline. "You are my sister." Emma dictates, her tone sharp, demanding, and utterly detached from reality. "You have the money now. You are going to write me a check today. You are going to cover the mortgage on the estate, and you are going to keep my premium credit cards active until this blows over. You are used to struggling, Maya. You know exactly how to live like a peasant. I do not. I was not built to be a disgraced single mother living in a cheap, cramped rental apartment. I was built to be a society wife. You owe me this financial support. You have to maintain my lifestyle. I will not accept anything less from you." I stand perfectly still and stare at my sister. The sheer, breathtaking magnitude of her delusion is almost difficult to process. Her fake husband has just fled a federal raid, her mother-in-law is currently being arrested for international money laundering, and her entire marriage has been exposed as a criminal fraud. Yet she is standing in my kitchen demanding that I finance her luxury handbag collection and subsidize her stolen mansion. The Dutch angle slowly corrects itself, the camera leveling out to capture the absolute, undeniable shift in power. I stand tall, my posture perfectly straight, my expression carved from solid ice. I slowly raise my right hand and point my index finger directly toward the open front door. "Get out," I say. The command is quiet, but it carries the undeniable crushing weight of absolute authority. Emma scoffs loudly, rolling her eyes in sheer annoyance. "Stop being dramatic, Maya. I told you exactly what I need. I need a massive check to cover the mansion. I am not leaving this house until you transfer the funds into my account. I absolutely refuse to lose my house because of his mess. You already lost it, Emma. I state, my voice dropping into a deadly clinical register that slices through her arrogance like a freshly sharpened scalpel. You do not seem to understand how federal asset forfeiture actually works. You do not own that mansion. You never did. Daniel bought that massive property using stolen funds directly embezzled from Sarah's generational trust account. Emma's smug, demanding expression finally begins to crack. Her arms uncross, falling limply to her sides. The bank is not going to send you a polite late notice. I continue, stepping around the granite counter, forcing her to take a hesitant step back toward the exit. The federal authorities filed a comprehensive, non-negotiable lien against the property at exactly 8 o'clock this morning. The bank issued the formal legal foreclosure notice 2 hours later. That luxurious estate is now officially government property. I point to the door again, my eyes burning with cold, unyielding finality. You do not have a mortgage to pay. You have a federal eviction to survive. The authorities are giving you exactly 30 days to pack up your stolen designer clothes, grab your pathetic, overpriced handbag, and get out on the street. You have absolutely nothing. You are absolutely nothing. Now take our mother, walk out of my home, and never show your faces here again. The camera cuts sharply. The frantic, shaking, handheld motion vanishes completely. It is replaced by a perfectly still, perfectly balanced eye-level shot. The visual chaos is gone, replaced by an atmosphere of absolute clinical control. 30 days have passed since that afternoon in my kitchen. 30 days since the grand illusion shattered into a million irreparable pieces. I sit behind the massive, polished obsidian desk in my corner office at Apex Crisis Management. The room is a sanctuary of quiet power. The thick, soundproof glass windows block out the frantic noise of the downtown Atlanta traffic below. I take a slow, deliberate sip of my black coffee. The contrast between my current serenity and the absolute devastation of the people who tried to destroy me is staggering. The fallout over the last month was swift, brutal, and entirely public. Daniel did not make it very far. He was apprehended by federal agents less than 3 hours after fleeing my house, pulled out of the VIP lounge at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, with a forged passport in his pocket. There was no leniency for a man who embezzled millions from a generational trust. The judge denied his bail immediately, citing him as an extreme flight risk. Daniel traded his custom-tailored Navy suits for a standard-issue orange jumpsuit. He is currently sitting in a federal holding facility staring down the barrel of a 20-year sentence. He has not spoken to Emma once since the day he ran. Patricia's spectacular downfall was even more satisfying to watch unfold. The arrogant matriarch who had threatened to bury me in endless litigation found herself completely buried by the United States Department of Justice. The federal authorities did not just freeze her accounts, they seized her entire estate. They seized her vehicles. They even seized the expensive art hanging on her walls. Her highly paid corporate lawyers vanished the moment they realized her retainer checks would bounce. Patricia, the woman who ruled her country club with an iron fist, was forced to move into a cheap weekly rate motel on the outskirts of the city. Her wealthy friends stopped returning her calls on day one. She became a total pariah overnight. And then there were Beatrice and Emma. For 30 days, I watched their movements from afar. I did not interfere. I simply let their own toxic pride dictate their actions. A normal mother would have accepted the reality of the situation. A normal mother would have sat her pregnant daughter down, wiped her tears, and helped her pack her belongings. A normal mother would have found a modest, affordable apartment, pooled their remaining resources, and prepared for the reality of raising a child without the luxury they were accustomed to. But Beatrice and Emma were incapable of accepting a normal, modest reality. Their entire identities were intrinsically tied to the perception of wealth. To be poor, to be average, to be seen moving out of that exclusive gated community in disgrace was a fate worse than death to them. Emma refused to pack. She spent the first 2 weeks lying on the floor of her stolen mansion, sobbing uncontrollably, demanding that Beatrice find a way to fix it. Emma genuinely believed she was a victim of circumstance, refusing to accept any responsibility for marrying a con artist without asking a single question about his background. Beatrice, driven by her pathological need to maintain their social status, went completely manic. She could not allow the country club women to see her daughter evicted. She could not allow the neighbors to watch federal agents repossess the house. The 30-day eviction notice ticked down like a ticking time bomb, and Beatrice made the most desperate, financially suicidal decision of her entire life. She quietly listed her own house for sale, accepting a significantly lower cash offer just to expedite the closing process. She did not stop there. She contacted her financial planners and liquidated her entire retirement portfolio. She drained every single savings account cashed in, every bond, and gathered every last cent she had spent her entire life hoarding. She threw away her own long-term security, her own future, all to protect a meaningless facade of wealth. Her plan was incredibly reckless, but to a narcissist it made perfect sense. She would use all of her liquidated assets to pay for Emma to stay in that exact mansion. She would pretend the federal raid never happened. She would tell her friends that Daniel was simply away on a long business trip and that they were doing perfectly fine. But Beatrice had a major problem. The federal government had seized the mansion and immediately transferred it back to the bank for a rapid auction. Beatrice did not have enough cash to buy the massive estate outright, and with her suddenly unstable financial situation, no bank would ever approve her for a mortgage of that size. She was frantic. She was cornered. Until a miracle occurred. A private anonymous investor swooped in and purchased the mansion directly from the bank in an all-cash deal. This faceless entity then listed the property through an exclusive leasing agency. Beatrice pounced on it like a starving animal. She begged the leasing agent for a meeting. She offered to pay an exorbitant, grossly inflated rent. She offered to put down a massive security deposit and pay the first entire year of rent up front in cash, just to secure the property. She poured the absolute last drop of her life savings into this single, desperate transaction. My phone chimes on the desk, pulling me out of my thoughts. I look down at the screen. The notification shows a text message from Beatrice. It is the first time she has contacted me since I kicked her out of my kitchen. I reach out, pick up the phone, and tap the screen to read the message. The sheer, blinding arrogance radiating from her words is almost poetic. "We are doing perfectly fine without you." The message begins. Her need to declare victory even when she is drowning is relentless. "This family does not need an ungrateful, vindictive child like you. You thought you could destroy your sister. You thought you could watch us suffer. But you severely underestimated me. I protect my own. I found a private anonymous investor. He bought Emma's mansion back from the bank yesterday. He is a very reasonable, very wealthy man, and he agreed to lease the property back to us long term." I read the next line, letting a slow, deep smile spread across my face. "I paid the lease in full," Beatrice wrote. "Emma will never have to live in a slum. She will raise her baby in the exact same luxury she is accustomed to. She will never be a pathetic charity case like you. We won, Maya. You failed to break us. Do not ever try to contact us again." I read the message one more time. I do not feel an ounce of anger. I do not feel any lingering resentment. I feel a profound, exhilarating sense of absolute closure. They are so thoroughly blinded by their own vanity that they never stop to question their sudden strokes of good luck. They never stop to wonder who this mysterious, benevolent investor could possibly be. They just blindly assume the universe is bending to accommodate their supposed superiority. I set the phone back down on the dark, polished obsidian. I lean back in my ergonomic leather chair and interlock my fingers, resting my hands on my lap. I let out a soft, genuine laugh. It is the laugh of a woman who has spent 12 years carrying the heavy, suffocating weight of conditional love, only to finally realize the absolute freedom of setting it down. The heavy glass door to my office opens with a soft click. My executive assistant, Chloe, steps into the room. She is holding a thick leather-bound portfolio tucked neatly under her left arm. She stops perfectly in front of my desk, her posture professional, her expression completely neutral, though there is a tiny knowing glint in her eyes. She knows exactly what has been going on behind the scenes for the last 30 days. She knows exactly how much capital I authorized the firm's private real estate acquisition shell company to spend at the bank auction last week. I look up at her, waiting for the confirmation. Boss Chloe says, her voice clear and steady in the quiet room. The new tenants have arrived at the reception desk. They are asking to meet the property owner to officially sign the lease agreement and hand over the cashier's check for the first year of rent. I slowly stand up from my chair. I smooth out the invisible wrinkles in my tailored suit jacket. I pick up my favorite silver pen from the desk. Bring them into conference room A. I reply, my voice perfectly calm. Let us go. Welcome my mother and my sister to my property. I walk around the desk, heading toward the door. The trap is perfectly set. The bait has been swallowed whole. They have brought me every last cent they own, completely unaware that they are handing their entire financial existence directly to the daughter they threw away. It is time to sign the papers. It is time for them to look their landlord in the eyes. And it is time for them to realize that they have exactly 30 days to pack their bags and get out of my house. The camera cuts to the bustling, sunlit street level of the financial district, adopting a smooth tracking shot positioned directly behind Beatrice and Emma. We follow them from behind as they march toward the towering monolithic glass and steel structure of the city's most exclusive commercial high-rise. The visual contrast between their internal catastrophic ruin and their desperate external performance is absolutely staggering. They are walking into the building as if they still own the city, draped in the final lingering remnants of their fraudulent wealth. Emma is wearing an absurdly expensive oversized cashmere coat, belted tightly to conceal the physical reality of her pregnancy, paired with massive designer sunglasses that hide her red, swollen eyes. Beatrice walks beside her, her chin thrust forward at an arrogant angle, clutching her crocodile skin handbag like a weapon. They are completely bankrupt. Beatrice has liquidated her entire life, emptied her retirement accounts, and sold her own home for a fraction of its value, just to produce the piece of paper currently burning a hole in her purse. Yet they stride through the revolving glass doors of the lobby with the blistering entitlement of royalty. The camera follows them closely into the glass-paneled elevator. As the digital floor indicator rapidly climbs higher and higher, their conversation echoes in the confined, mirrored space. They are utterly, hopelessly wrapped in their own delusion. Beatrice speaks in hushed, excited tones about the private investor they are about to meet. She has painted an elaborate fantasy in her mind. She envisions a wealthy, elderly white male billionaire who recognized the inherent value of their social standing, a patriarchal savior who took pity on a beautiful, disgraced society wife and bought her mansion back from the ruthless bank. Emma nods along enthusiastically, her earlier despair completely erased by her renewed arrogance. She complains about the inconvenience of the past month, casually dismissing Daniel's federal incarceration as a minor annoyance that temporarily disrupted her lifestyle. She talks about hiring a new interior decorator for the nursery the moment the lease is signed, entirely convinced that this meeting is nothing more than a minor administrative formality before she returns to her rightful place at the top of the social hierarchy. The elevator bell chimes with a crisp, clear tone. The stainless steel doors slide silently open to reveal the 40th floor. The camera pushes forward, tracking over their shoulders to capture the sheer, breathtaking opulence of the executive brokerage level. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer a dizzying panoramic view of the entire Atlanta skyline, positioning this office high above the traffic and the common people below. The floors are cut from seamless slabs of black marble. The walls are adorned with minimalist, highly expensive modern art. The air in the reception area is perfectly climate-controlled, smelling faintly of citrus and polished leather. It is a space designed specifically to intimidate a fortress of absolute corporate power. Beatrice and Emma step out of the elevator, their designer heels clicking sharply against the marble. They approach the massive brushed steel reception desk. Sitting behind the desk is Chloe. She looks immaculate, her hair pulled back into a severe, flawless bun, her expression a mask of absolute, unyielding professionalism. Emma does not even bother to remove her oversized sunglasses. She approaches the desk and immediately taps her manicured fingernails aggressively against the steel surface, treating my executive assistant like a low-level servant. "We are here for the private signing," Emma announces, her voice loud, demanding and dripping with condescension. "We have an exclusive appointment with the managing director of the investment group regarding the Sterling estate in Buckhead. Announce us immediately. We have a very busy schedule today." Chloe looks up, her face perfectly calm. She does not flinch at Emma's abrasive tone. She offers a polite, terrifyingly empty corporate smile. "May I have the name the appointment was booked under, please?" Beatrice sighs heavily, stepping up beside her daughter and projecting her own brand of country club superiority. "The appointment is under my name." Beatrice snaps, clearly offended that they are not instantly recognized. "And we do not have time to sit around waiting in the lobby. We were personally invited here to execute a long-term lease agreement." Chloe types a few keystrokes into her computer, moving with deliberate, unhurried grace. "I see the appointment," she replies smoothly. "The chief executive officer is finishing a conference call. If you would please take a seat in the waiting area, I will let you know when the office is ready for you." Emma completely loses her temper. The mere suggestion that she has to wait pushes her golden child entitlement past its breaking point. She scoffs loudly, ripping her designer sunglasses off her face and glaring at Chloe. "You clearly do not understand who we are or what we are bringing to your firm today," Emma snarls, her voice echoing shrilly in the quiet, sophisticated space. She reaches into her handbag with a frantic, aggressive motion. She pulls out a crisp, certified bank document and literally slaps it down onto the brushed steel desk right in front of Chloe. "Do you know what this is?" Emma demands, pointing a trembling, manicured finger at the printed numbers on the paper. "This is a cashier's check for exactly $100,000. This is a full year of rent paid entirely in cash up front today. Your boss bought our mansion from the bank specifically to lease it back to us. We are VIP clients. We are holding $100,000 in our hands. I am not sitting on a waiting room sofa like a peasant. You pick up that phone and you tell your boss that his money has arrived, and we demand to be seen right this second." Beatrice nods firmly in agreement, crossing her arms over her chest. "My daughter is absolutely right. We are bringing a massive amount of capital into this brokerage. I expect a much higher level of respect and urgency from the staff." Chloe looks down at the certified check resting on her desk. She does not look impressed. She does not look intimidated. She simply looks at the $100,000 that represents the absolute final drop of Beatrice's liquidated life and then looks back up at the two desperate women standing in front of her. The polite, empty smile returns to Chloe's face. "I completely understand," Chloe says, her voice smooth as glass. "$100,000 is certainly a significant transaction. Please follow me. The chief executive officer has been expecting you all morning." Chloe stands up, retrieving a heavy leather-bound folder from her desk. She steps out from behind the reception area and gestures for them to follow. Beatrice and Emma exchange a triumphant, smug look. They truly believe their aggressive behavior and their borrowed cash have successfully bullied the system into submission. They fall into step behind Chloe, adjusting their posture, preparing to turn on the charm for the wealthy, benevolent male investor they have fabricated in their minds. The camera follows behind them as Chloe leads them down a wide, silent corridor. The tension builds with every single step. The hallway is lined with dark, polished wood paneling. The acoustic dampening in the ceiling absorbs the sound of their footsteps, creating an eerie, pressurized atmosphere. At the very end of the long corridor stands a set of massive, towering double doors made of solid, dark oak. There are no nameplates. There are no titles. There is only the imposing presence of the corner office. Chloe stops in front of the heavy doors. She looks back at Beatrice and Emma one last time. "Right this way," she says softly. Chloe reaches out, grasps the heavy brass handles, and pushes the double oak doors wide open. Beatrice and Emma step over the threshold, walking into the cavernous space. The camera tracks smoothly behind them, capturing their perspective as they enter the room. The office is vast and breathtakingly intimidating. A massive geometric obsidian desk dominates the center of the room. Behind the desk, an enormous ribbed leather armchair is turned completely away from them, facing the panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows that look out over the sprawling city below. Beatrice instantly adopts her most charming, sophisticated society voice. She takes a confident step forward, ready to secure her daughter's future. "Good afternoon," Beatrice calls out, her tone dripping with manufactured warmth and gratitude. "I cannot thank you enough for making time to see us today. We have the certified funds right here, and we are so incredibly grateful for your private investment in our property." The room remains perfectly silent for 2 agonizing seconds. Then, the massive leather armchair slowly, deliberately begins to swivel around. The smooth, expensive mechanism of the chair glides silently. The back of the chair turns, revealing the figure sitting behind the obsidian desk. I am sitting there. My posture is relaxed, my hands steepled beneath my chin. I am wearing a razor-sharp tailored charcoal suit. My eyes lock directly onto my mother and my sister, capturing the exact devastating millisecond their brains attempt to process the impossible reality in front of them. The triumphant smiles on their faces instantly die. The camera shifts, positioning itself directly behind my right shoulder. The over-the-shoulder shot frames the expansive, gleaming surface of the obsidian desk in the foreground, looking down at Beatrice and Emma. They are standing perfectly still, trapped in the center of the massive office. The visual composition strips them of all their manufactured authority. From this angle, they look incredibly small, completely swallowed by the sheer scale of the corporate fortress I built from nothing. The silence in the room is absolute, heavy and suffocating. The triumphant, arrogant smiles they wore just seconds ago have been wiped away, replaced by a sickening, paralyzing confusion. Beatrice blinks rapidly, her eyes darting from my tailored suit to the panoramic view behind me and then back to my face. She is desperately searching for an explanation that fits her narrow, prejudiced worldview. Her brain simply refuses to process the visual evidence in front of her. Beatrice breathes, her voice a hollow, wavering rasp. "What are you doing sitting there? Where is the managing director?" Emma steps forward, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. She glares at me, her initial shock rapidly morphing into petulant anger. "Get out of that chair, Maya!" She snaps, her voice shrill and echoing off the glass walls. "This is not a joke. We have a highly confidential meeting with the owner of the Buckhead estate. You are going to get yourself fired for playing around in your boss's office." I do not say a single word. I simply rest my elbows on the cool, polished stone of the desk. I interlock my fingers, slowly resting my chin on my hands. I pick up the heavy sterling silver pen lying next to my leather blotter. I tap the metal tip lightly against the obsidian surface. A single sharp click rings out in the quiet room. "I am the boss, Emma." I state, my voice perfectly level, carrying the cold, undeniable weight of absolute truth. Emma scoffs, throwing her hands up in the air. "You are a crisis manager. You clean up scandals for local politicians. You do not own a private equity firm. Stop wasting our time and go get the investor." I tap the silver pen against the desk a second time. I lean back in my chair, folding my hands over my stomach, and hold my sister's furious gaze. Apex Crisis Management is the parent company. I explain, my tone slow and deliberate, as if I am speaking to a remarkably slow child. I built it 12 years ago. It generates a massive amount of liquid capital. 5 years ago, I diversified. I created a subsidiary corporation to handle high-yield, distressed real estate acquisitions across the southeastern United States. The color begins to drain from Beatrice's face. Her breathing grows shallow. She stares at the silver pen in my hand as if it is a venomous snake. That subsidiary real estate firm is called Apex Holdings. I continue, watching the horrifying realization dawn in my mother's eyes. When the federal government seized Daniel's assets 30 days ago, the bank immediately put your mansion up for a rapid closed-door auction to recoup their losses. Apex Holdings was the highest bidder. We purchased the property in a completely anonymous all-cash transaction last week. I pause, letting the absolute crushing reality of the situation settle over them. "I am the managing director," I say softly. I am the private investor. I am the sole owner of the Buckhead estate. Beatrice stumbles backward. Her expensive designer heels catch on the thick carpet, and she barely catches herself before hitting the floor. She presses her hand against her chest, right over her heart, gasping for air. Her carefully styled hair suddenly looks messy. Her expensive coat looks like a cheap costume. The grand, arrogant matriarch has completely vanished, replaced by a terrified, broken woman who has just stepped into a trap of her own making. But the money, Beatrice stammers, her voice cracking violently. The cashier's check. I just gave your receptionist a cashier's check for $100,000. I liquidated my entire retirement account. I sold my house. I gave her everything I had left in the world to pay for the first year of the lease. I offer a small, polite nod, the kind you give a vendor who has just delivered an expected package. Yes, you did, I reply smoothly. And I want to personally thank you for that generous deposit, Beatrice. Chloe processed the transfer the moment you walked down the hallway. That $100,000 cleared immediately. It is currently sitting securely in my corporate accounts. Beatrice lets out a sound of pure agony. It is a wretched, breathless gasp, the sound of a woman realizing she has just slit her own financial throat. She physically folds inward, her shoulders slumping, her knees shaking so violently they are visibly trembling beneath her skirt. You gave up your entire life, I continue, my voice dropping into a deadly clinical register. You sold the roof over your own head. You drained the accounts you spent 40 years building. You sacrificed your own security, all to protect an illusion. You were so terrified of the country club women whispering about your disgraced daughter that you willingly threw away your last remaining lifeline. And the beautiful poetic irony of it all is that you brought that money directly to me. I stand up slowly from the leather chair. I place both hands flat on the obsidian desk, leaning forward, dominating their visual field. You handed your entire life savings to the daughter you called a disgrace, I state coldly. You paid $100,000 to the woman you called a pathetic charity case. You financed my firm with the very last dollars to your name. Beatrice cannot speak. She covers her face with both hands, sobbing silently. The sheer magnitude of her ruin has paralyzed her. She has absolutely nothing left. No house, no retirement, no wealthy son-in-law, no social standing. She is entirely destitute, and she engineered her own destruction with her own two hands. But Emma does not collapse. Emma does not accept defeat. The golden child syndrome is a disease that completely blinds its host to reality. Emma's face contorts into a mask of rabid, unhinged fury. She refuses to accept that she has lost to me. She refuses to accept that the sister she spent her entire life looking down upon is now the absolute master of her fate. You manipulative, evil witch! Emma screams at the top of her lungs, her voice shredding the quiet dignity of the office. You set us up. You stole our money. You purposely tricked Mom into giving you her savings. I did not trick anyone, Emma, I reply effortlessly. I simply listed a property for lease. Beatrice sought out my leasing agent. Beatrice offered the cash up front. Beatrice begged to sign the paperwork. I merely accepted a highly profitable business transaction. It is not my fault that neither of you bothered to read the corporate ownership filings before handing over a six-figure check. I want it back, Emma shrieks, stomping her foot on the floor like a petulant toddler. Give us the money back right now. I am not renting a house from you. I will not live in a property that you own. I will not let you hold this over my head. Where is the lease agreement? Give it to me. I am going to tear it to shreds. We are canceling the transaction. Emma lunges forward, her hands slamming against the front of my desk. She glares wildly around the pristine surface, desperately searching for the thick stack of leasing documents she expects to find. She breathes heavily, her chest heaving, her eyes manic and completely out of control. Tear up the lease, Emma demands, slamming her fist against the stone. I look down at my sister. The sheer pathetic desperation radiating from her is almost tragic. I do not raise my voice. I do not match her frantic energy. The power in the room belongs entirely to me, and I wield it with absolute merciless precision. I reach into the top drawer of my desk. I pull out a single crisp white sheet of paper. It is not a thick stack of legal leasing documents. It is just one highly official, legally certified page. I slide the paper slowly across the smooth black surface of the desk until it stops perfectly in front of Emma's trembling hands. Emma looks down at the paper, her breath catching in her throat. She expected a contract to destroy. She expected a negotiation. But there is no negotiation. That is not a lease agreement, Emma. I say, my voice ringing with total unyielding finality. Emma's eyes frantically scan the bold black letters printed at the very top of the page. The color drains completely from her face. Her jaw trembles. She looks up at me, absolute horror finally breaking through her arrogant facade. "We never approved your rental application," I state coldly, holding her terrified gaze without a single ounce of pity. "We took the $100,000 to cover the outstanding legal fees, the property damage Daniel left behind, and the cost of clearing the federal lien." I tap my silver pen against the desk one final time. "That is an eviction notice," I tell her. "You have 30 days to get off my property." The eviction notice sits on the obsidian desk like a death warrant. The absolute certainty in my voice finally shatters the last remaining pillar of Beatrice's delusion. The perspective tightens, pushing in agonizingly close on my mother's face as the last shred of her dignity evaporates. Her pristine country club facade completely disintegrates, leaving behind nothing but raw, pathetic desperation. Beatrice's knees buckle. She physically collapses, her expensive tailored skirt pooling around her on the floor of my office. She looks up at me, her eyes overflowing with hysterical, manipulative tears. She reaches out her hands, grasping at the empty air between us. "You cannot do this to me, Maya," she wails, her voice thick with manufactured agony. "I am your mother. I carried you for 9 months. I endured the pain of bringing you into this world. You are my flesh and blood. You owe me. You have to let us stay in that house. We have absolutely nowhere else to go. You have all this money now. You must let your mother and your sister live there for free. It is your fundamental duty to this family." Emma steps forward, placing both hands dramatically over her swollen belly. She uses the only tactic she has left, attempting to weaponize her unborn child for moral leverage. "Look at me, Maya." Emma cries out, her voice shrill and trembling with righteous indignation. "I am pregnant. I am bringing a new innocent life into this world. How can you be so utterly heartless? You are actually going to throw a pregnant woman out onto the street. What kind of twisted monster puts a helpless, pregnant mother out in the cold?" I do not blink. I do not flinch. My heart beats with a steady clinical rhythm. I lean forward, resting my forearms on the desk, and look down at them with absolute zero empathy. I remember a very specific night exactly 12 years ago. I begin, my voice dropping the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. It was late November. It was freezing, and the rain was coming down in violent sheets. I was 19 years old. I was heavily pregnant with Leo, and I was experiencing severe, terrifying cramps. I dragged myself up the long driveway of your pristine estate. I pounded on your heavy oak front door. I begged for help. I begged for shelter just for one single night because I was in agonizing pain and terrified I was losing my baby. I watched the blood completely drain from Beatrice's face as the inescapable memory hits her. "You stood on the other side of that glass panel." I continue, every word razor sharp. "You looked me right in the eyes. You told me I was a filthy embarrassment. And then you reached out and turned the deadbolt. You left a pregnant teenager sobbing in the freezing rain." I open the top drawer of my obsidian desk. I reach inside and pull out 2 crisp, unwrinkled $100 bills. I hold them up for a brief second, letting the green paper catch the light. Then I toss them over the edge of the desk. The bills flutter slowly, mockingly through the conditioned air, landing silently on the floor right in front of Beatrice's knees. The camera drops to the floor, capturing a severe low-angle shot. In the sharp foreground, the 2 crisp $100 bills rest on the dark carpet. Looming in the slightly blurred background is my figure, standing tall, perfectly composed, and radiating absolute, untouchable authority. "Here is $200, I state, my voice echoing like a gavel striking wood in an empty courtroom. I am returning the exact amount you threw in my face 12 years ago. Use it to call an Uber. Beatrice remains frozen on the floor. Her eyes track the green paper as if it is radioactive. Emma has stopped screaming. The silence that follows my declaration is total and suffocating. You have exactly 24 hours to pack your personal belongings and get out of my house. I continue delivering the final crushing verdict. You will take only your clothes and your immediate personal effects. Every piece of furniture, every piece of art, and every fixture belongs to the estate. Monday morning, the police will arrive to officially seal the property. If you are still inside when they arrive, you will be arrested for trespassing. The illusion is completely broken. The grandiose facade they spent decades carefully curating has been violently stripped away, leaving them completely exposed. Beatrice looks up at me one last time, her face a mask of profound, terrified realization. She finally understands that I am immune to her tears, immune to her guilt trips, and immune to the toxic maternal bond she weaponized for so long. There is absolutely no room left for manipulation. The well of my empathy has completely run dry. With her hands trembling uncontrollably, Beatrice reaches out. The woman who once ruled country club galas with a sneer, the woman who would rather face financial ruin than social embarrassment, slowly lowers her head. She scrapes her manicured fingernails against the carpet and picks up the $200. Her pride is entirely shattered. She struggles to her feet, leaning heavily on Emma. Neither of them says a word. Emma refuses to meet my gaze, staring blankly at the polished obsidian desk as she supports her mother's weight. They turn around in complete agonizing silence. Their designer clothes look absurd on their defeated frames. They slowly walk back toward the heavy oak doors, their footsteps lacking all the aggressive arrogance they carried when they first walked in. They look small, pathetic, and entirely broken. They step out into the hallway. The heavy double doors swing shut with a deep, satisfying thud, sealing them out of my world forever. The oppressive tension instantly vanishes from the office. I let out a long, slow breath, feeling an incredible lightness wash over my shoulders. The quiet click of a side door opening draws my attention. Leo steps out from his private inner lounge. He is smiling brightly, carrying 2 steaming mugs of hot chocolate. He walks over to my desk, sets one mug down in front of me, and looks up with a look of pure, unconditional love. I reach out and take the warm mug from my son's hands, returning his bright smile with one of absolute unbroken peace. As I take a slow sip of the sweet chocolate, the perspective begins a smooth, deliberate pull-out. The camera glides backward, capturing the immense, imposing scale of my corner office. The harsh, pressurized atmosphere from earlier completely melts away. Warm, golden afternoon sunlight pours through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, flooding the obsidian desk and bathing the entire room in a soft, radiant glow. It has been exactly 6 months since that afternoon. The fallout for the people who tried to destroy my life was absolute and irreversible. Daniel did not get the leniency he so arrogantly expected. His federal trial was remarkably swift, and the judge handed down a definitive sentence of 10 years in a maximum security federal penitentiary for his extensive financial fraud. There are no country club privileges where he is going. Patricia suffered a similarly catastrophic fate. She spent every last dime she could borrow trying to fight the federal asset forfeiture, but she lost on every single front. The government seized her remaining hidden accounts, forcing her into total, undeniable bankruptcy. The arrogant matriarch who once judged everyone by their bank accounts was ultimately relocated to a crowded state-funded public nursing home. She spends her days bitterly complaining to orderlies who do not care about her former socialite status. As for Beatrice and Emma, they packed their meager personal belongings and vacated my property precisely within the 24-hour deadline. With Beatrice's entire liquidated life savings securely resting in my corporate accounts, they had absolutely nowhere left to turn. They were forced to sign a lease at a crumbling, dilapidated apartment complex in the most dangerous, neglected district of the city. They are currently surviving strictly on government welfare checks. Emma, the pampered golden child, has become nothing more than a heavy, inescapable financial burden to a mother whose only currency was ever wealth and public perception. They are trapped together in a miserable, squalid reality of their own making. The camera stops its slow retreat, pushing back in to settle on a tight, intimate close-up of my face. I look directly into the lens, holding your gaze. People completely misunderstand the concept of revenge. They assume it requires dramatic screaming matches, violent confrontations, or public chaos. But true revenge is entirely silent. It is the quiet, relentless dedication to your own growth while everyone else sleeps. It is building your empire in the shadows and letting your massive, undeniable success speak for itself. True revenge is forcing the people who mercilessly trampled you to spend the rest of their miserable lives looking up at you from the absolute bottom of society. They stripped me of everything to protect a lying facade. Now I have used the truth to strip away their facade. The sweetest revenge is when you become the creditor of those who tormented you. Have you ever had to stand up to protect your child against your own flesh and blood family? Tell me your story in the comments below.